will call this meeting officially to order. Oh, yeah. Can we do public comment? Yeah, officially call this meeting in order because we don't have quorum, but we can do public comment. Is there a public comment? No? Okay. All right, so then now we have our quarterly board appointee reports from ACRB. We have Dr. Floyd.
Good morning, good morning.
Morning.
Before I start my presentation, I would like to first thank APAB for appointing me. Actually, this month makes a year. I have been confirmed. Thank you. And so I just want to thank you so much for this experience and being appointed to the ACRB. It has been a very rewarding position. So I just would like to start off with our presentation. One of the requirements of a board member is we have to join a subcommittee, which consists of either policies and procedures, training, or outreach. We also have to attend at least 3 outreach events a year. And we have to attend all board meetings, which is once a month, which is the second Thursday of each month at 6:30, which is located here in City Hall on the 2nd floor.
Floyd, I'm sorry to interrupt. I forgot to let you know you have 2 minutes for your presentation.
Dr. Floyd, can you expand it's the same presentation? Yeah. This topic, you know it, and we know it.
Okay.
Your 2 minutes don't start until everybody starts.
Okay. May I proceed? Okay. So I don't know if you can really read this from where you are, but the Atlanta. Okay, so the Atlanta's. Okay. Okay, so the Atlanta Citizen Review Board, we are an independent investigation agency that investigates citizens' complaints against Atlanta police and correctional officers in the city of Atlanta. So we consist of 15 board members. I'm one of the 15. We have an agency staff of 14 city employees, and our jurisdiction, as I previously mentioned, is Atlanta Police and Correction Officer. Our authority is we can investigate, we can provide mediation, and we also conduct community engagement. So as I just mentioned here, the 3 services that we provide and what's included under them, you will see in the presentation packet. Okay, what is the uniqueness of APAB's seat on the board? We currently have 4 seats. APAB have the broadest ability to appoint from a diversity of the city. APAB also appoints and represent all geographical areas in the city of Atlanta. APAB has the potential to make a significant contribution to the officers' accountability and raising citizens' concern about officers' action through MPU members' engagement with the ACRB. APAB board members can present diverse perspectives representing the need and concerns of the various communities here in the city of Atlanta. So what can you do as APAB? Request a member from each MPU attend our monthly board meetings, which is the second Thursday of each month at 6:30. Receive and share the ACRB information with APAB. We send it to each one of the MPU chairs. Encourage MPU participation in the 2025 art, essay, and verbal expression contest. Encourage MPUs to request an annual ACRB 10-minute presentation and Q&A. Expanded diversity through APAB appointments of bilingual community members. And we say that because when we go for outreach, we're noticing more and more of other diverse communities, such as the Hispanic population, the Asian population, and we would like to see that diversity on our board so we can address those issues and go into that community.
How adorable.
So what can you do as an individual? You can become a board member. You can visit the ACRB website regularly and share what you've learned. You can inquire about becoming a volunteer and the opportunities we have, and also join the Integrity Street Team. You can join the ACRB email list to receive updates on agency news and events. You can attend the ACRB board meetings to see the board in actual action. Invite ACRB to your community events. Ask questions about the agency work and needs. Join the ACRB Speaker Bureau. Become the ACRB content writer. Become an ACRB community touchpoint member and participate in the ACRB focus group. And then in closing, I just want to talk about the announcement. We're currently having our 2025 art, essay, and verbal expression contest. The deadline is January 13th. It would be great if you could share this so we can receive more submittals. Also, our ACRB December board meeting will also incorporate our holiday celebration and open house, which will be December 12th, 2025 at 6:30 here in City Hall on the second floor. And we anticipate opening up an ACRB survey in spring 2025. And then the last slide, of course, is our contact information. Are there any questions for me as I conclude my presentation?
Thank you, Dr. Floyd. Just my question is, I know you all do a lot of community engagement too, outside of hearing cases. So what is something that you, I know you noticed that these events, but what are something that you all are focused on right now?
Okay, so one of the things with my background, I like intervention and prevention and reduction. So I have been able to work with the board and the staff where we're now, we have partnered with this Atlanta Public School System. We went last week actually to Midtown High School, and we presented Know Your Rights, because we feel if we start working with the youth, we can reduce or prevent future incidents and situations. So recently, we partnered with APS. We also, on Monday, we will be connecting with seniors. So we're going to a senior living facility to talk to the seniors. And then also another thing we partnered with APS is we will be presenting to parents for them to know their rights as it pertains to their children. Yes.
Dr. Floyd, thank you for presenting to us. One thing that I wanted to highlight, I mentioned this to Director Reed, as well as other members of the staff members that support that office. There is currently an appointment position for 18 to 30-year-old, and the appointing agency for that board is no longer in a position to apply. I won't say what the status is. And that has remained unfulfilled for a very long time. As part of our city code, another body can now appoint, and I would like to propose at our next meeting, if I could recommend a gentleman that has been a former intern within City Hall and also very active in the Toastmasters Club. If we would interview him or bring before him potentially, we can't appoint him, but we can suggest that he appointed from our body. He's a Georgia State student, majoring in economics, very active already. And he's expressed interest. I told him about the position. Although we are not the appointed authority, because that time is expired, we can submit that appointee as someone who is showing something qualifies, because that appointed authority is now no longer in position to make the appointment. So I would like to know if I can have permission to invite him to our next meeting in January. We're not meeting this month, to come before us. I'll make sure we have his resume and everything submitted in advance so that we can potentially appoint him if we see something.
I think we need to hold on that.
No,
I think it's an issue with the appointing, I don't think it's an issue with appointing someone. I may be wrong, but I think the issue, I think. I think.
I spoke to the executive director already.
Point of order. Thank you for that recommendation, Mr. Hunter. In order to quell that, I will reach out to the director directly to get an update, to see if there are any changes. And if there is opportunity for us to make an appointment or to recommend someone, then we'll bring them before the body. Mr. Silver?
Dr. Floyd, thank you for joining us today. I'm curious, as we approach the end of the year, do you feel like the ACRB has recommendations or concerns that have not been, as you look at the totality of the year, do you feel like you have recommendations or corrections that haven't been kind of honored that you're carrying into next year, or that you need some movement on, or perhaps visibility from this board on?
As far as, if you're pertaining to APAB, yes, one of the things we would like to see is, more, feedback or participation from the MPUs. On a monthly basis, each one of us is assigned to a MPU. We email the MPU chairs every month, pretty much the executive director report, as well as just giving you background of our monthly and quarterly reports. And also in those emails, I also provide that, let me know when you have your next meeting, so I can at least come once a year and present to educate your community that we exist and their rights. Maybe one or two may respond and say received, but we never hear anything else. And I've even reached out to other board members that represent MPUs, and they have the same concern. So if anything, we would like more participation or support from the MPUs that we represent.
Thank you, Dr. Floyd.
Thank you.
There's no opposition to the appointment. I think I just want to get there.
I understand, I just want to get clarity. All right, so moving along, it is 10:18. We're calling this meeting to order. We have a quorum, we're 15 members. Let's look at the meeting report.
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Who seconded? Thank you. It's a motion and approved. Motion by Mr. Hunter, seconded by Mr. Hassan, to accept the November 16th agenda. Is there any objection? All right, approved by consent. Moving on to the voting report.
Madam President,
Mr. Hunter?
I make a motion for the approval of the voting report October 19, 2024.
Is there a second? Second. Motion has been made by Mr. Hunter and seconded by Mr. Leo. Any discussion on that motion?
I think there's a potential correction. I don't see on here, when we voted last month against the December meeting, that's not reflected in the. Yeah, so we did go do that last month.
Yeah. Did we do it last month or the month before?
We did it last month. Last month.
Check the exception. Yeah, this is not, just to give it, this is not. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
It appears to have changes from the prior.
Gotcha.
meeting.
Madam Chair, I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you. All right, presentations and reports. We have presentations from Dr. Bryce Mama for the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Committee on community. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
And
And also,
Dr. Sumama, you have 10 minutes. Okay.
I got good instructions. 10 minutes for the presentation and 5 minutes for Q&A. But as I said, thank you all for allowing me to present this morning, and thank you for the work that you do. I've always had a lot of respect and admiration for the NPU system that just recently celebrated its 50th anniversary, so I'm glad to be here with you. Many of you may not, because I'm looking at some fairly young folks here, but I did have the honor of serving on your city council. And I represented Council District 3. And I'm still working in Vine City and English Avenue and live in Washington Park now. So it's just good to be with you, and it's also good to be able to present to you. On July 24th, Mayor Andre Dickens launched a Blue Ribbon Committee, and this is what he wanted to do. Many of you may remember this concept of public access television, which has been part of Atlanta since 1980. 1980 was the year that the cable system came into Atlanta. It had been around in the suburbs prior to then, but a few lawsuits by the NAACP and the Southern Regional Council sued WSB, and the result of it was that the cable operator, whoever was selected, had to lay cable in both North Atlanta and South Atlanta at the same time. But more importantly and relevant to you is that the cable company had to provide a community benefits program in the form of community media, or what's often called public access television or community television. And that channel and that program was launched in 1980. I had the good fortune as a 20-something-year-old to be hired as the first director of that program. And I was the original director and ran the program from 1980 to 1986. And in 1986, we created a community-based nonprofit media corporation that you all may have heard of called People TV. And People TV operated the community access program from 1986 all the way to 2023. And in 2023, for reasons that I don't understand all the details, but I wouldn't want to bore you with all the details, the city ended the contract with People TV, closed the channel down, and since 2023, there's been no operator of community access, the community media program that had been around since 1980. And the channel, for all practical purposes, have been remained black since then. That was clearly a problem because the cable company and the agreement with the city required that there be educational access channels. Clark Atlanta University operates one, the Atlanta school system operates one. There'll be government access channels. And of course, you can go to channel 26 or you can see that channel streamed. And then there would be community access or public access. So since all these other channels have been operating continuously since 1980, but the community's channel was shut down in 2023. So the mayor launched the Blue Ribbon Committee, and he asked for me to get involved, being the original founder of it, and then staying kind of in touch and engaged all through the years to help do something about that situation. So I had a few charges. One was reopen the channel, which we're planning to do as early as December of this year. To identify makerspace, which is television studios in the community. And by the way, thank you, Joe. Joe's on the Blue Ribbon Committee, did a great job chairing the technology committee. But to identify studio space in communities, we're looking at two spaces now. One is in Home Park off of 10th Street, and we're even looking at 2 Peachtree Street. That 42-story facility that the city is redeveloping now into mixed use. And we're also looking at community recreation centers. We looked at the West End Arts Center. We've looked at Dunbar. We've looked at Burdine. We've looked at various different locations to see what might make for a good location for a community access studio. I was also charged with finding a permanent operator, and that is if People TV was no longer going to operate community access television, who should be the permanent operator? So we're looking at a number of different operating structures for that. He also asked to do a big section on youth engagement, and that is how we can engage more youth in this program once it's up and running again. He asked to recommend a budget, and he asked to recommend an oversight mechanism. So we're involved right now in making recommendations in all of those areas, and won't make those recommendations until December 14th. So if any of you have specific recommendations as, you know, we think the studio should be at this particular location, you know, in my NPU or my community, we're open to all of that. The only caveat is that the city, we're not going to be able to pay for the space. So right now the city is providing whatever space we identify now. It's going to be a public space. It's going to be something that citizens have already paid for, and it's not going to cost the program any money. People TV was paying $8,000 and $9,000 a month to rent on 14th Street. I mean, that's a lot of money, and that's money that should have gone into programming and not gone into rent. So we're not going to be in that situation again. I'm not going to be recommending that we go to 14th Street and pay $10,000 a month to rent. But we got recreation centers, we got community centers, we have schools, we have libraries. The city has a whole lot of assets in addition to Two Peachtree and the space we're looking at over in Home Park. So that'll be part of my recommendations, but there's still an opportunity for you to make recommendations. We've had you on here, by the way. We've done a number of community engagement sessions. I don't have all of them on there. We've probably done a dozen or so big ones, but this is important for me to be here today. Recommendations will be in to the mayor, as I said, around the 16th we'll brief the mayor on the recommendations on the 16th, and then the final report will be delivered on the 31st of December. So this is kind of our calendar. This is kind of our chart. This is kind of our mandate. This is not moving forward. So can you advance me, or I'm not exactly sure why I'm not moving forward. Okay. We've already talked about the progress and some of the meetings, so don't need to go over that again. Next slide, please. All the equipment for this Makerspace Studio has been ordered. Most of it's in and it's arrived. On November the 8th, we have launched the website internally, so it's going through beta testing now. I need your help on that again too, Joe, so that's something we'll talk about later. And then on December the 1st, any member of the public that has programming now should be able to go to that website, register, upload the program, and request a channel time. Doesn't mean you'll get the channel time you request, but you can be able to put in a request. Everybody probably want prime time on Wednesday, so we'll work through a fair and equitable schedule. And then on channel the 6th, the channel will be operating on more or less a full-time basis in the next slide. And around the time of the MLK birthday, that week of January 15th, we want to be able to open these community-based studios. And I can just tell you right now that might be helpful. We want a central hub, and that's kind of a big makerspace, big studio somewhere, and want to be in the city. One of you all's NPUs, no doubt, it will be located there. And by the way, who's over the Home Park NPU? Is there anyone here that represents Home Park? It's great. We want to talk to you specifically offline if that's the location. What about the 2 Peachtree Street, which is kind of downtown? Great. Want to have that same conversation with you. But as I said,
Nothing south of 20.
beg your pardon.
Nothing south of 20.
Haven't finished yet. So we're talking about a hub, and I invited everybody, if you have a location that we could launch this program in, whether you're south, north, east, or west, let me know. Want to hear from you. But we're going to have the central hub. But in addition to the central hub, we're going to have satellite facilities in community centers and recreation centers that will link to the central hub. So that there'll be some capacity to produce programs and things like that at locations other than the central hub, wherever we decide to locate that. So I'm interested in anybody that knows of space that might be available for the central hub, as I said, north, south, east, or west. But I'm also interested in these satellite locations. We want to have 4 or 5 satellite locations. When this program was fully running, when I was operating, we had 5 different locations, including the first makerspace in the Black community in Atlanta. It was on Camden Road. It was in a Pizza Hut. We renovated that into a studio. That was the first one in the United States of America. Of course, it's no longer operating now, but would like to hear from you. More importantly, not more importantly, but of equal importance, once we get this program up and running, we had about a couple thousand people who were trained and certified to produce community-oriented programming from these facilities. We want that to happen again, and we can do that in a much more impactful way now because the technology has changed, and streaming services are there, and we've got YouTube, and we got other types of social media, and Atlanta has changed. We've got this great hip-hop industry and the technology companies and et cetera, et cetera. So we should be able to take this community-based media concept and link it to what is happening in the industry, building on Atlanta's civil rights tradition and NPU tradition that Mayor Jackson started in 1973 and has something that would be the envy of the nation. So that's my goal, and that would be part of my recommendation. I know just the last slide, I know my 10 minutes are up, and I'm going to stop here because I think you have the essence of what we're trying to do, and I think it becomes evident of how you could help us. And we really want to spread the word, and we want to get the community involved. I'd love to have NPU meetings and the neighborhoods that represent the NPUs telling narratives on this channel once it's up and running.
So before we continue,
I'm finished.
before we continue, you had 10 minutes for presentation. You went to 12, 13 minutes. So our question and answer session now will be about 2 minutes. If you have any further questions that we can get answered here, please email Dr. Simone. Okay, Mr. Hunter, you have a question?
Good, still morning. Good morning. Thank you for bringing this presentation to us. We got a preview of what my question is going to go. Nothing is south of 20. When I think about People's TV, and I guess I'm one of the youngsters you're talking about. When I got on this board about 7+ years ago, the people who spoke about People TV, Adrian Coleman, Ron Shakur, Ben Howard, they live in Southwest Atlanta. They use it, they watch it, they publicize it. That's how I became aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I see nothing about Southwest Atlanta or south of 20, even because Adrian Shakur is on the east side, southeast Atlanta. And that's disturbing to me. People's TV, or it's not gonna be like public access TV, part of it is having access to it. Home Park, great place. It's a little far from the central part of the city, especially the south side. 2 Peachtree, awful parking. Awful parking. It's in West Midtown? Oh, okay. And so, I mean, I think that what you just said, I know you're looking at, so you're saying the city owns no property in southeast or southwest Atlanta, NPU Z, NPU Y, NPU P, R, S, X. We don't own any property that we can use for public access. I think that.
I know you must not cheer for a reason.
And it's a small place, but we know you don't have no space for it. Unless you put it in your clubhouse.
Yes.
But, not in your room, but seriously, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That we have people who use it, and we want to explore that, but you have to start where your base is, that's the foundation of public access TV in the city of Atlanta. It's historic, as you said, in Southwest Atlanta, and your report speaks to nothing of that, except for that this is where we were.
Well, Mr. Hunter, I hear you and I agree with you. And we'll make sure that, that concern is addressed. Now, remember, we did the network of community technology centers in 2000, which was a sister program of that. And we have 25 technology centers in, mostly all in South Atlanta. So, if anybody understands the truth that you speak today, it's me. And I'm not gonna make a recommendation that doesn't take that into consideration. You can be sure of that.
Dr. Salama, thank you for your time. I have a follow-up question for you. You said that you are providing your recommendations to the mayor's office on December 16th, but you're looking for recommendations for us for a studio space. When do you need those recommendations or suggestions by?
It would be ideal if I could get them within the next couple of weeks. And I think December 1st is a good, and by the way, I can give you my email, which is my last name and first initial at Gmail. So it's J Salama. But you can also get your recommendations into Joseph, and he can, because he's on the Blue Ribbon Committee, and he can make sure that we get them.
Okay. So how is Monday, December 2nd? Because the first
Is a Sunday. Perfect.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, and then maybe once the program's up and running, we can come back again and talk about how we can get more community involved in the facilities and the program once we're up and running. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have Center for Civic Innovation, Rohit and Kyle.
Yeah. Cool. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It is so.
Rohit, reminder, you guys have 10 minutes.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Make sure it works. Making sure it works.
Sit right.
Making sure it's on. There we go. Cool. Okay, cool. Good morning, everyone. We're super grateful that y'all had us on such short notice. I'm excited to just spend a little bit of time with you. It's been some time since we've had a conversation about the NPU initiative, which launched about 5 years ago to the day. So very excited to be back here having that conversation. My name is Rohit Malhotra. I'm the executive director at the Center for Civic Innovation. I'm joined by my colleagues Kyle and Ann. I know you don't know Kyle, but I definitely hope you get to know him, and we'll introduce yourself in just a little bit as well. But I'm just going to set the context and tone and toss it over to folks smarter than I am. But the Center for Civic Innovation is an organization that we just celebrated our 10th year this year, which is super exciting for us as a small grassroots organization that's focused on building community, the community's understanding and power to be able to affect long-lasting and transformative policy change. Those who know us for a while know that we're pretty unapologetic in that mission. But for us, we also know that our mission is absolutely impossible without working with the folks who are actually on the ground in neighborhoods who have been doing this work well before we even existed. Some of y'all were probably like 10 years. We were doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. So we know that we're so lucky to be learning about the work that's happened on the ground so that we can start to think about where we go from there. So what does CCI actually do? I need to send this slide deck to my mother as well because she's not exactly sure, but hopefully I can be a little clearer with y'all. But the first thing that we do is we monitor legislative processes and budgets at the municipal level. So we're at every city council meeting, every committee meeting, every school board meeting, county meeting, the meeting after the meeting that happens in the parking lot after the meeting happens, we're there. So we try to get that information and publish it to the public in a digestible, understandable format. We run something called This Week in Atlanta. If you have social media, we're at Civic Atlanta. Every Sunday, you can see what legislative decisions are being made across the city that affect Atlanta. The second thing that we do is we try to inform and engage residents of Atlanta about what's going on, not just through this public-facing content, but through events, programs, discussions. And we do that during election cycles and in between election cycles. As you know, we have an election that's still happening right now actively in Atlanta. So we've been very active in letting people know that that's happening and why that role is so important. And then in between election cycles, we're pushing for transparency and accountability. You said this, but you did that. That doesn't make any sense. And so we'll push on both candidates and elected officials to say, to hold them accountable to the word that they made to communities. And then the last thing that I think is just so special that I wish I could spend more time talking about is we supported and invest in community-based and grassroots organizations in Atlanta. Over the past 10 years, we've supported almost 150 different organizations that are focused on testing, designing new ways of doing things. And new ways is sometimes the old way, but it is testing new interventions inside of neighborhoods and communities that government is not currently investing in, but if scaled, could be the way that public policy could and should look like. So that's just a bit about who we are and what we do. And as I said, the NPU system is just core to who we are, and we got involved in what we ended up calling the NPU initiative, just so everybody was happy with the name and didn't debate it. But 5 years ago, we learned a lot, and what we wanted to make sure we did was, and I want to make this clear, the purpose of the NPU initiative is because we believe that innovation and community power lives at the neighborhood level, not inside of these buildings. It lives in the streets, in the communities, in the neighborhoods that y'all are in. And so if we're serious about innovation and we're serious about transformative change, this is where it is. But I just wanted to, as I toss it over to Kyle, just express my gratitude that the NPU initiative would not have existed without APAB, without NPU leaders who pushed us, who really challenged us, who sent us 25-page letters and said, respond to this. I'm just so grateful for that because I think it's made us better as an organization and better as a city as a whole. So I'm going to toss it back over to Kyle and we'll close later on. Thanks.
And Rohit said that this started 5 years ago. It started 6 years ago because before we launched publicly, APAB had us come and speak to this body when it was still meeting in the committee room about what was going on, because folks had heard that it was happening. But as Rohit mentioned, we're wanting to make sure that people's voices and the needs are being heard through the system. We were looking at a variety of different things: purpose, roles, powers, communication, structure, process, capacity. And then through that work, wanted to make sure we were looking at effectiveness, equity, accountability, and restoration. So when we were talking about, and as we talk about the NPU system, it's not just NPUs, but APAB, the other bases that are involved, council, all the various entities up and down that impact the NPUs. We had a three-phase process, starting off with listening and just making sure we're building relationships with APAB, with community leaders across the city, extensive data collection in phase 2, and then 3, building a coalition and making sure we were hearing and co-designing what these recommendations would be. We had a lot of conversations with folks across the city, did a series of interviews, we had an advisory board, both Sierra and Leah were on that, as well as Debbie, who's not here today. There was an ad hoc advisory committee from APAB that was also involved that met with us on a routine basis. A series of surveys went to each and every MPU across the city in a pre-COVID world, actually going to each and every one of them, and then hosting listening sessions as well. So just a quick overview of some of the data, some of the things that we found through this process. One, although NPU leaders themselves thought that providing input on planning was one of the main purposes of the NPU system, council members thought that weighing in on other actions was more important or a larger purpose of the NPU system. And we'll make sure that you get this data as well. With planning in the name of the NPU system, you think that there'd be lots of neighborhood plans, but as we identified, there were lots of portions of the city that had not had a small area plan done for them in at least 15 years. Going back through some of the archival information, back when the NPU system was first getting off the ground, there were 18 dedicated staff members at the city working on NPUs. For quite some time, from 1985 up until about 2019 or so, it was down to just 2. There was an NPU coordinator and then an assistant who was working with them. Since then, that number has started to grow. I currently understand there are 9 working employees and 1 vacancy that exists, so 10 active positions that exist. And as the quotes here so identify, if the city doesn't have the staff, it exacerbates the inequity we have in the city. Because as you all know, you are all volunteers, and there's limited capacity for volunteers to do much. So the folks at City Hall need to take this on as a job to make sure that things are being accomplished. And then lastly, the role of the NPU planner. So what is the job of the person who's coming to your meeting as the NPU planner? There was a difference between what the NPU planner would have to say. They primarily saw themselves as liaison, which was also something the NPU leaders thought. But the NPU leaders also thought the planner's role was to help educate the NPU. That is not what the planner thought their role was. I'm going to pass it off to Ann to talk about what the recommendations were.
Hi, my name is Anna. I am the Senior Research and Policy Manager. I'm new to the CCI team, but not new to CCI. What I will be talking to you about is the recommendations that came through. When I talk about the recommendations, this is definitely in partnership with the Mayor's Office, City Council, residents, NPU, APAB, and everybody that we have in our ecosystem. Okay, this is what I was saying. So the first, and the recommendations are on your sheet here, are on your sheet here if you want to follow along. Time is of the essence, so I won't speak about everything, but strengthening purposes is one of the biggest recommendations, aligning the purpose and goals with the NPU system, as well as developing small area plans, as you saw in the chart, that we still need to, give some love to that. Ensure information is timely, understandable, and tailored to residents, and increase awareness and eliminate borders of participation. Strengthening leadership and capacity, improving conversations and coordinating citywide. Again, this is a full partnership across the city, right? Provide support to NPUs and focus on equity, prioritize NPU-related staff and services inside the city and government. Strengthening transparency and accountability, document and clarify legal requirements and standard operating procedures, provide feedback and transparency to NPUs on matters that impact them, and implementing an ongoing evaluation process. And so you can dive a little deeper in that, but we only have 10 minutes, so I want to keep time. And back to Kyle.
Yeah, so we put our recommendations out in 2021, but since then, or since we started the initiative back in 2019, we also want to recognize there have been a series of changes that have been happening in partnership with CCI or outside CCI. So folks that are in this room hopefully know that in that time period, the position of Leah and her team has moved within the Department of City Planning. As I mentioned previously, the staff has grown substantially and continues to grow. There are new things like the NP University, the dashboard that exists. We are now in hybrid meetings or remote meetings versus when we first started the initiative and everything was in person. Council has a role as well, but I will kick it over to Rhoda because our time has ticked and we want to make sure that we have a chance to discuss what's next.
Yeah, very last thing. I'm sorry, Kyle doesn't know the rules about APAB, so I wanted to have this time. So at the end of the day, all of these look like really simple recommendations, so y'all are probably like, yeah, obviously, that's what we need to do. This comes off of a 70-page document with a bunch of different data that's there that Kyle said we'll make sure that you have. But here's the end big takeaway. No one agrees on the purpose of the NPU. And that may seem so simple, like, oh, well, yeah, it's complicated, yes. But because people do not agree on the purpose of the NPU, meaning the codified purpose of the NPU, that means that you have very serious disagreements that play out in action between city council, between the NPUs themselves, between APAB. We believe that one thing that's going to be really important for us to help with, and where we think we could be most helpful, if you believe we could be most helpful here, is to help bring back these stakeholders to say, okay, we all agree that the purpose is not agreed upon, but let's actually create a purpose that is codified, that is put in place so we can stop having this debate, because every other recommendation stems from that problem. That if you can't agree on the purpose, then it's impossible for us to have a conversation on budget, capacity, keeping things standardized, etc. So that's our kind of ask to y'all, is we would love to spend 2025 really diving into this, bringing these stakeholders back together, but we want to do it in partnership and relationship with APAB to make sure we do it in a way that is useful and effective to all of you. So thank you for your time, and yeah, happy to take any questions if that's allowable.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
Are there any questions? So,
I'm unclear. What are you proposing?
Sorry, I'm trying to talk fast and also, yeah, so basically, we would love to actually start doing like we had almost, I don't know what it was, a few hundred different stakeholders that we involved over the course of 3 years. They all said that they agree that the purpose is not agreed upon. So what we're saying is in 2025, we would love to bring a number of those stakeholders back together to actually go back to what does the charter actually say the purpose of the NPU is supposed to be? What do y'all believe it should be at this point? Are there changes that need to be made to that? Are there things that need to be codified through legislation? Are there things that are just cultural and that just needs to be stated otherwise? What are the actual changes that need to happen so that there can be an agreed upon purpose of the NPU system? So we're proposing we can help facilitate that, but want to do it in partnership with APAB.
So my question is more so parts of this in terms of, do you all have, I guess, ideas about what's next? And does that involve some more sessions? And we do a great job in this city of planning and making plans, but I'm more so in terms of, are there some suggested actions? Or maybe that, because y'all are outside, but I'm just curious in terms of, what do you think, based on the data you all collected, should be some next steps?
Yeah, all right. So let me just be completely real with you. When we finished the NPU initiative, it was 2021, an election year. So we asked all the people who were running for office, we were like, it's 2021, here are the recommendations. It's come from hundreds of people. Are you down to actually do something with this? Everyone obviously said yes. And then the year when they're elected, we saw very little activity on taking action on those recommendations. Now, there are some things that have been done, like growing the actual staffing capacity, but there are other things that haven't been touched, like the purpose of the NPU system being codified. We think we believe council members should be taking that on. We believe committees should be taking that on, but frankly, they're not. And last time we waited on them to do it, we waited 8 years to eventually say, you know what, we should just, I think we're gonna have to do this on the outside. So part of what we want to do is be the facilitator who can help, and we don't have to. If there's a better way to do this, we're open to recommendation, because no one's asking us to do this. It's more like we see it as an issue. So would love to do facilitated group sessions with bringing those stakeholders back in to be able to say, what should the purpose be? How do we get to those kinds of answers? And then actually give the answer to city council members to say, this is what it should be. I think that's kind of what we're trying to do, is stop waiting for city government to come up with the answer and be able to push it on them on what we believe it should be. And I'm using the holistic we, not CCI we.
Mr. Toomer, and then is there anyone else before I go back to the south? Okay, Mr. Toomer, let me say.
Yes. Thanks for your presentation, very good, and thanks for all your time that you put in. I was at the beginning of it, it's really been yeoman's work. In the interpretation of the purpose of the NPU, could it not be acceptable to have this broad interpretation where all of the different concepts are really useful, as opposed to trying to define and pinpoint laser beam into a specific? In other words, sometimes a broad brush when you're dealing with community is better, as opposed to putting it down where you cannot do something, as opposed to where you can lean towards it.
Yeah, I don't think we are trying to find a one singular purpose, but as sort of shown in the data before, if the NPU participants think when the planner shows up, they should be educating the NPU about the legislation, about the other things that are on the agenda. The planner sees their role as, I'm just here to take the vote and report it back to the city. There's a misalignment there that needs to be somewhat resolved, right? That's not saying that's the only thing that happens in the NPU meeting.
That's a great example of what I'm talking about. Some NPUs have a power within their own NPU where they don't need that. Others do. So if you try to pigeonhole and say, all planners do this. No, my need for my planner is different. And that's what I'm getting at. I'm not trying to change it. I'm just throwing it out there for conversation and possible thought. And thank you for your answer.
I think that's right. I think like we have to figure out what are all the potential uses for that use cases, so we can put it out to make sure however it's defined is actually something that works for everybody. So yes, that's the answer. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I guess the question is, do all the NPUs think that the same thing should be done? I think all the NPUs should be like mine, so.
We learned, we learned that through the process.
Is that a motion, Amy?
Yeah.
But I have long argued for standardization, and when we come up against the city, we have a checklist that we give applicants, and I talk to my friends, they're like, we don't have that. I'm like, why not? They should have minimal expectations when they come to you with an application, and when you go anywhere in the city, you should be expected to share this information with the people evaluating. This seems like a bare minimum to me, and if we can't even, agree on my bare minimums, I've been to a lot of NPUs in the past, but I don't know how she runs her meeting or he does his exactly. And so I don't know if we all even agree on that.
Yeah, I think the 3 years of we saw that in real time, like how differently some of these are run. I think the goal is not to take away the uniqueness of how each of the NPUs are run, but what we also saw was you would go to one NPU meeting and they got cheese and wine, and then you go to another NPU meeting and
There were no NPU meetings with cheese.
There was what was that one with the food? There was what was it? And I'm not going to name names here. Not here. What am I saying? I'll talk to you about that later. There was definitely food at one of them. So anyway, all I'm saying is there are some NPUs that have a little bit more resource than other NPUs may. There were other here's a really good example that I think really showed the glaring difference. There are some NPUs where when somebody says a phone number at the front and they say, and you can contact me at 404-770-4444, right? It would go up on a screen or it's already on here. There are other NPUs where it'd be like, you can contact me at 404-77. What was that number again? Could you repeat that? And then it would be 3 times, and those meetings would actually be elongated because of efficiency things. And I don't think that's a cultural thing. I don't think they're like, yes, we love repeating at this NPU. I think we want to make sure that what are the things that are worth standardizing, and then how do you also create flexibility so the cultures of each NPU can act the way they want to act. So I think it's a fair point.
Okay, one more question from Mr. Barnett.
Not necessarily a question, but I think it's an intriguing idea to create this sort of sense of purpose, aligned sense of purpose for the NPU system. If I may, I think your next step though is to figure out how to create an engagement plan. And one thing that APAB can really help you with is to hammer out that engagement plan, the awesome plan to go and work with citizens, work with leaders to be able to put all that together. So
Yep.
I would encourage you to put together a plan and come back to us with that so that we can help you find out the details.
Perfect. Yes, thank you. And we'll share with you how we did engagement 3 years ago, which is maybe different than in a post-COVID world as well. So we'll share with you what we did, who we talked to, what that looked like. I would love to get just comments on what worked or didn't work, because that's obviously the methodology we apply. And then what you think we should change and how we can be doing that better would be very open to that feedback. So yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hunter, it has a 10-second comment.
I just want to say that I think that engagement overall will be different because I think there's less suspicion around CCI this time around.
Yeah, that's right.
I can remember last time it came around, y'all with the ghost that I did not know about.
Yeah.
And I could ask about, but I think now the organization has settled in, and I think that you will be embraced differently. And so I do recommend that second group around.
Only if you keep calm.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Well, I think too, given where APAB is now and the participation, it's easy to have a quick conversation around some of these sort of key differences without having to go to 25 different meetings across the city. Not that we still don't want to do that, but I think APAB being in a place to be able to have that conversation and be able to sort of bounce these ideas off and share information, I think it's a much, we're all in a better position a few years later.
Part of the reason we added Anne onto the team is her deep expertise of working with community-based organizations that may not be formal, may not be, I think that's also important in this, is that there's the formal entities and institutions, and then there's the folks who have been doing this a long time without a name, right? Or without what that looks like. So I think we've also matured in our ability to have conversations beyond just institutional players. And again, I'm not just saying it because I'm here. I express like deep gratitude for the push that you did on us. It was the grind we needed, I think, to just get better at our work. So we're grateful. Thank you.
And lastly, we want to recognize that the city is moving on with phase 3 of the NPU work itself in the 5th anniversary and what's happening next and planning for the future, as well as I think the wellness survey will get us some information collectively about where there are some opportunities across the system that might be, uniquely sort of geographically located or whatever else. So I think there's a lot of stuff that we can be doing for the next 50 plus years of the NPU system.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. We look forward to working with you, and please share that data document.
Yes.
Because that will actually be helpful for us as well as we're planning out.
Fair warning, the data now is a little outdated, but we're going to need to collect some more as well. So thanks, y'all. We really appreciate it.
All right, y'all, up next we have a Plan A update with one of our favorite planners of all time.
I can't believe it's been 6 years since they took that survey, CTI. And I think I was the only one that said advocate as a planner. Because back in the 1970s when our department was created and thinking about, master plans and comp plans, neighborhood plans, NP system, it was all based on advocacy planning of the day. And it's in our DNA in our department. So that's just my personal belief, but I'm happy to join CCI and interviewing and stuff like that in the future.
So Nate,
Yep.
you have like 15 minutes for your presentation, and then we'll have like 10 minutes for Renee. We said about 20 minutes. Yeah, we said about 20 minutes total.
Okay, great. So Catherine and I are really happy to be here again. I was here back in September. We had quite a few meetings, including our big meeting at Top 55th floor. I hope many of you attended that meeting. I was out of town, but the views were amazing up there. I'm happy that we had almost 200 people at that meeting. So I'm just going to give you a brief update. Again, if you have any questions, if you want to talk to us offline, we are at our studio down on Mitchell Street. And we actually had a little open house yesterday. We had 2 people show up, but we'll have more of those over the next week. It was super quick. It was a pop-up. It was a surprise pop-up. But next meeting is Monday, Historic Preservation Chapter Highlight at the Preservation Center. So right now we had about 80 RSVPs, 75 RSVPs. Matt and his team will be presenting on Monday about the Historic Preservation chapter, all the great stuff they're doing after the Future Places initiative was adopted or implemented in 2020. Transportation chapter is the next one in December. That should be a really good one. ATL that's leading that and be a good panel. Segura, I'd like to talk to you after the meeting about that. So where are we at? We are at round 3 community meetings. The draft is out for public review and comment. That it also includes the revised zoning 2.0 module 1. Both dropped this week. I am just now starting to read the zoning module 1 revision, but again, we are working on the citywide comprehensive plan, a policy, a guide. Kieta and her team with Caleb at TSW is updating our 1982 ordinance, our zoning ordinance, the tool to implement the plan. Please keep them separate, but we are right now tied to the hip in terms of public engagement, getting comments, sharing amongst the teams internally, comments we're hearing from the public, as well as, elected officials, our own staff. So again, both drafts, zoning module 1 revision is up now. Full draft of the comp plan is up on our website. December 4th, in between our historic preservation chapter and that transportation chapter in December, there's a zoning module 2 public meeting on December 4th. You can read the zoning modules, the revisions, and all this stuff about the zoning on atlzoning.com. Now, my commissioner, we were asked by a few elected officials to kind of start talking about zoning 2.0 and Plan A engagement together, since we're sharing comments back and forth. So this is kind of like showing that number of 4,700 between our, at this point, over 40 meetings, plus the dozen or so zoning meetings, people who have attended. I crossed out 4,700 because we've had about 300 or so, over 400 or so people in our last 4 meetings total. We're way over that. So it just keeps on growing. Now, our ambassadors are everywhere. And if you all want us to be at your neighborhood as a pop-up, please let us know. We're actually looking, we're going to be at Streets Alive tomorrow. We got several Shop Small events at the Main Street program or Main Street areas in the works. So please, if you have a neighborhood thing going on, let us know. And between me and Catherine, we'll try to be out there and just get the word out, talk to people on the streets. Now, the full draft does reflect kind of round 1 and round 2 comments, but we are still going through all of those comments. So I'm not going to say that the current draft you'll see on our website reflects all those thousands of comments. We're still going through, and we're actually looking at doing an updated or a refresh of this draft late December or the first week of January, depending on the holidays, my workload during the holidays. But we are taking your comments. We're improving the plan. So please keep on sending us your comments. Drop your comments on the online version. You all are giving us a lot of great comments. Now, I want to go through kind of like the website right now, how you can leave comments. But if you have any questions, please reach out to us and ask for conversations with planners. We are meeting with individual NPUs. If the CID wants to meet, if a couple of neighborhood groups want to meet, we will come to you. We would join one of your meetings. We would set up a virtual meeting. We met with 17 people at NPU-H this past week. We have Garden Hills, Peachtree Hills, and others coming up in like 2 or 3 weeks. NPU-Y in January. We have 2 CIDs next week. So please, if your NPU wants to meet with us, kind of go through all these comments, questions, kind of learn more about this, ask us for a conversation with planners. Just email plana@atlantagA.gov or give us a call. Now, when you go on our website, review and comment comes to this page. You can now read and comment on the draft. You can look at the land use map. You can even make comments about different areas. If you're like, not sure about this land use, look into it. You can do that. You can also look at a story map where you can actually see your existing future land use and how we interpret or translated that future land use to the new development pattern. So you can swipe back and forth in your neighborhoods and see, whoa, low density mixed use today, low density mixed use is proposed. That is on the story map. So all that is available under the review and comment tab of our website. Now, I'm sure you all have looked at the zoning ordinance or looked at Plan A in the last round. The Conveyo is super easy to use, but again, if you have any questions on how to use it, please just give us a call. We'll set up a Teams call, walk you through it. But you can download the PDF, print it, mark it up, do whatever you want to do. You can leave comments directly online. You can piggyback or daisy chain on someone's comment. That is all online right now. All of the full plan, all the chapters, all of the 13 chapters plus the appendices are all on that Conveyo for you to download and comment on. Now I want to highlight one of the appendices, Appendix 6. Appendix 6 is our way of being a little bit transparent about what has changed in that land use chapter that you all saw last round and the land use map. We have in that appendix 39 worksheets. The worksheets that we all used in round 2 are now in that appendix, kind of showing you the tally of how many people voted on or told us they want this land use or this land use in 39 different spots around the city. The appendix, I just want to go back to it, highlight Appendix 1 are your NPU policies. It's also your NPU land use map. You will be getting an email from me this week, each of the NPU chairs and your land use zoning committee people. Your NPU policies in the Word document for you all to start, if you haven't already, to start revising those NPU policies by the end of February. So you'll see another email from me about that. Maptioneer, again, if you looked at it in round 2, pretty intuitive to use. You can click on different areas that we still want feedback on translating that land use. I mentioned we had 39. I think we're down to about a dozen or so right now that, hey, we had some mixed opinions about how this should be translated. There's another opportunity to give us direct feedback on that mapping software. And then the story map, again, I told you, you can slide the bar back and forth, see your existing, see your proposed land use. In addition, you can see those little worksheets pop up in the window and you can get directly to those worksheets. Caveat here, I checked it this morning and some of the links are broken. So I will be working on fixing those links or working with the website people to fix that by Monday. Again, any comments, come to our community meetings. We're there to help or ask for a conversation with planners. Now, I'm going to go super quick through these because all this text coming up is in the draft, but I just want to highlight a few big themes here. We heard loud and clear, keep our single family neighborhoods the way they are today. Stop messing around with ADUs and whatever. That has all been cleared up. And I also looked at the zoning module update. That has also been very clearly cleared up. We also heard, though, that, hey, I would like to have the ability to not get in my car and drive to the grocery, take my kid to the dentist. There are opportunities to have more density around our corridors, especially in neighborhood commercial areas that are adjacent to low density and single family. So those land use map changes, these land use, the development pattern principles, those are starting to be revised to reflect that large amount of comments that we got in the first 2 rounds. The other one I want to highlight for today is the medium density residential. Now, there was a lot of comments about like RG3. You know, there's little apartment buildings. I live in Midtown Garden District. We got a whole bunch of those. In that previous draft, it was like RG3. RG3, if you kind of think about it now, if you look at the zoning module update, it's the high point of low density or the very bottom of medium density. Medium density is like 3 to 8 stories in the mixed use corridor, or like a neighborhood commercial, like 5 stories. Okay, just want to clear that up. We got a lot of medium density residential. What is it? Can you guys fix that? And I hope that's clear. And I'm sure it's going to be even more clear over the next few months if we get more comments back on the zoning module. And it comes back to us to clean that up. Again, these are all in the document, but these are summaries of the thousands of comments that we received in the first 2 rounds. There'll be a redline version of this draft and all future drafts moving forward. So whenever we make additional drafts and post it online or share it to council, there will be a redline version. I want to finish with saying the compatibility table was probably the most commented thing on our document last round. It has been fixed. It is back to its original state. There is no RG3, no duplex, R5 in single family, for instance. There is no condition about having commercial in your low density residential. The only thing that's different, I want to highlight, and I hope no one gets offended, right now, you could have a developer come into your high density, you can have a developer come into my neighborhood, a high density mixed use land use, and they can come in and buy my property and build a single house. Because, you know, R1 is allowed in high density mixed use. That makes no sense. So that floor to R1 and all of the mixed use and residential has been taken away. And there's a floor now of how low dense you can go into our mixed use areas for our medium density or high density residential areas. That is the only thing that's different. And I think many people agree that that makes a lot of sense. NPU policies. You all should know your NPU policies. I hope you use them in your recommendations to us, the staff and council. But here's an opportunity to update them for the next 5 years. Some tips. Use plain language. It's your voice. It is your sets of policy in the comp plan. Please review them to make sure they're already not supported by city policies in the comp plan. It's kind of redundant. Remember, these are general recommendations. I reviewed all 660 of them. There's some that talk about putting a poop bag in a park, poop bag holder, but we don't need that in the comp plan in your NPU policies. You can organize them by any way you want. Some do it by themes or topics, your neighborhoods or other small geographies. Most of you all use text. There's like one that uses a graphic. You could use graphics and maps. It's all up to you. Some have one, NPU-L, follow our plan. Some have over 60, NPU-H. It's all up to you, but please take a look at them. Please ask us for questions about that. Now, CCI, we have a new commissioner. Since all that work's been done, we have been mandated to look at small area planning. We're done with the comp plan in June and July. So Catherine's going to talk to you about some of our early thoughts about that small area planning program. I can control this.
Okay, cool. My name is Catherine. I do not have the pleasure of meeting you all, but it's lovely to see you here this Saturday morning. I joined the city a little over a year ago, and my very first task was to research the last 10 years of small area plans. And I'll tell you, they are all very different, right? Someone spoke to the issue of lack of standardization. I saw it. And so we have a few ideas of how to maybe make that better, but I will start with what we currently have since 1999. You can access all of these plans on our website. These are the adopted plans. Now, the orange, that's what we're calling a small area plan. The blue is our corridor studies that happened in the early 2000s. Obviously, the darker blue is the Beltline that we all know. The pinks are the LCI. So we have plans that have been developed by different entities, right? They're not all city-led. They're funded by different mechanisms. Maybe the city department had some funding. Maybe a neighborhood organization had their own funding. Maybe a city council member funded a plan that was requested by a community. But that is to say that, like what we saw in CCI's presentation, there are holes because a lack of standardization and an idea of where the funding comes from means that we have blank areas that don't have plans, right? So a neighborhood plan or a small area plan, as we often use here, this is the plan that covers your area, your specific area, and a high level of detail where we can, move further in implementing Plan A by seeing how we can make that come to life in your own community, right? And we are proposing a neighborhood planning program that can cover the entire city with these plans that align with both Atlanta City Design, which was also adopted in 2017, and Plan A, which will be adopted next year. So some of the things that we're looking at is how can we have a very transparent planning program, right? We want to develop criteria to determine planning priorities, and this kind of helps us assist with our current capacity. And that is to say, as pointed out in CCI's a presentation, right? There are not a lot of us, right? In the planning studio where we're housing, where this work is kind of growing from, there's 7 of us, 7, right? There's 7, and that makes capacity on our side limited, right? We also know that we're in this situation where a lot of, I will say I come from a different jurisdiction where study areas are outlined by the government or by municipal government and funded every cycle. We are in a situation in Atlanta where we have the NPU boundaries, right? And we have council districts and we have different funding mechanisms. And that, again, that makes it a little murky on how we can make these plans come to life. And we are still in a situation where we want to be able to allow neighborhoods to create their own plans because maybe they're not super happy with the speed at which we're able to accomplish it. Let's just say that. So we want to create a neighborhood planning guide that is very transparent, that's very clear. A nice example, if you'd like to do some of your own research outside of this that I was looking at while determining or trying to figure out what ours would look like would be the Pittsburgh Neighborhood Planning Guide.
Pittsburgh, PA.
Yes, Pennsylvania. So there's they have a very straightforward process that outlines what city and organizations have to do to get a plan adopted, right? Like everything from what community engagement should look like, which is one of the goals in our proposed neighborhood planning chapter, is to make our community engagement great. It's to make it so that it's not just all of us here in this room, it's everybody who we meet out at, hopefully at Streets Alive. We're going to be on Georgia Avenue and Grant Terrace, please come see us. And to make sure that after the planning process, and actually during the planning process, we understand what implementation is going to look like, right? We are a planning studio, we are not implementers, but we would like to be able to assist these communities and areas on how you move the plan forward, right? How we move the transportation plan forward, or the transportation issue into the CTP. Or if you have a public space project, we have a public space studio. Is there something that we can do to make that come to life? And so there are some considerations, right? We want staff, we would love to make sure that when possible, we have staff leading plans, right? We want to make sure that we're applying for grants such as LCI every single year so that we can increase the number of plans that we can do. And we also want to make sure that we don't do your plan, we implement some things, and then we go away, right? We want to make sure we can come back, do an update when necessary.
Great. So next meeting is Monday, historic preservation. Again, zoning 2.0 next meeting, December 4th. Please review and comment on both on our websites. Again, that's how you do it. If you have any questions for Plan A, let me and Catherine know. We will incorporate any final map comments to the end of January. We will take any of your NPU policy updates and any comments on the draft through the end of February. Come March, we are going through the adoption process. You will see us present at your NPUs March, April, and May. You will see me and Catherine, not Catherine, but you will see me asking for votes in May and June. I will probably have a special call public hearing June 30th. It's a Monday, it's a fifth Monday. That will probably be the last public hearing. We will hopefully adopt this thing before the 4th recess.
Okay, say that again. You accept comments on maps
Maps to the end of January.
and NPU policies to the end of February.
End of February. There'll be another draft, the draft that kind of goes through ARC, DCA's review, council. That'll probably be a substitute ordinance based on comments we receive at your NPU monthly meetings from March, April, and May. But I will ask for votes May and June. And there's also a purpose of why we're coming 3 months ahead. It is to make sure that residents who don't typically attend your NPU meetings attend at least 3 meetings, so they're eligible to vote in May. I got a lot of comments about that. Please spread the word, even to people who don't typically come to your meetings. We want everyone's voice to be heard in this planning process. Thank you. Any questions, clarifications? Yes, Jim. And that's if you're at pick and choose, but I see Jim's hand.
Have questions from Mr. Martin, Mr. Burnett, Mr. Schluter, first, Rita has a follow-up.
If you don't mind, Nate, going back to the policies slide.
Policy
I would like,
slide.
before you go further in the discussion or get questions, I would like for you to explain for the benefit of those sitting around the table, because I know my people, and I can guarantee that about half the room understands the policies and how they're used at the city. So would you mind explaining to everybody what the policies are and how they are used so that people understand the importance of the policies? Because we're not just asking you to write policies and make sure that they're broad and that they're using regular language and blah, blah, blah. If they don't know how the Department of City Planning actually uses those policies.
So for those who are around in 2020, 2020, I guess, Daniel and I emailed you all your NPU policies then. And we also did something we hadn't done before. We attached examples of how your NPU policies are actually used in our staff reports. So when OZD, Office of Zoning Development, makes recommendations to council through ZRB, hey, this land use change is recommended by your NPU based on NPU policy A1. That's one way we use it. We go to your NPU policies every time we make a recommendation for land use. Is this in support of an NPU policy or not? You know, like high-rise apartment building in the Midtown district, It is not supported by NPUE Policy 5, where we want to have low density in the Midtown Garden District. That's important for us to make sure your voice continues in the legislation process. Others, we would love to start incorporating your project ideas, your needs and opportunities, and your policies into a small area planning program, So like when we did NPUH, right before COVID, we were already thinking about how can we distill some of these big visions and goals into NPUH policies. And then those policies are now in the comp plan in addition to that small area plan. So there's no miscommunication of what NPUH wants to see in their neighborhood. It's in their small area plan and in their policies in the comp plan. Just another example. Please look at them. There's stuff in there. Back in the 80s, us planners wrote them for you. And then they were just kind of in the comp plan. Reviewing the 660 of them, I have a whole database, a whole Excel sheet of all your comments. There are ones back from my predecessors wrote them for you all in 1980 that haven't changed. Like, I can show you specific ones that have not changed since the 80s, and it makes no sense right now. And we are here to help.
I want to talk about those two after next week.
Any other, is that hopefully that clarifies stuff? The urgent, or not the urgency, but the importance.
Can I just ask, does that clarify stuff? I really want to see like heads nodding for the people that I know need this information more so than others. I know that W gets it. I know some of y'all, I know Ed gets it. I know E gets it. Like, I know some of you really get it, but I also know that many of you don't, and I don't want you to miss the opportunity to get it.
Can we get those resent? Because
Yeah, I'm sending those out this week. Yeah.
But the examples.
Yeah, the examples too. I got new ones, fresh new ones. From the past 4 years.
Are they only going to the chair?
Next week, you would send an email regarding the policy.
Yeah, to each chair. Yeah, and I have the chair and the land use zoning contacts in the
And then
email.
can you also send it to APAB? Because
APAB?
not everyone here.
Okay.
is the chair.
I will send it,
Just send it
I'll
to me.
figure out how to do
Send it
it.
to me.
So if you get an email from Leah, don't ignore it. I know you all open my emails.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Martin, you had a question?
Yeah, going back to the zoning land use compatibility.
Yes.
You don't have to bring it up.
Okay, so you can't see it.
But the example that you cited, which I think is a good example, right? You live in a high density mixed use area and someone wants a single family zoning, that shouldn't be compatible. But the problem with interpreting it that way is that I can get an MRC3 zoning and still build that single family.
Because of the zoning.
And so what you're saying, if you eliminate that compatibility, is sure you can build it as long as you build it with a wildly inappropriate zoning, then it's okay. But if you build it with the appropriate zoning, then it's going to require a CP amendment. And that seems like the wrong way to consider the problem.
That's one way that I can help fix the problem. The other side of the house is the zoning, and perhaps some of those zoning ordinance suggestions could be applied to the zoning 2.0.
We encountered this quite often with MRC as opposed to MR zoning. When planning staff decided that MR zoning was no longer compatible with mixed use. And so and I imagine other MPUs the same way, we all the time get MRC applications for purely residential projects.
Yes.
Which is really inappropriate.
Yeah.
What they say is the CDP demands it.
Duly noted, and I hope to work through some scenarios with the zoning TSW team to kind of get to some of those issues. I can't guarantee that I can fix them, but here at least I recognize there's a thing that I can help in the comp plan. I am doing it. I will try to bring that additional ideas or those additional insights into the zoning discussion. Please do so as well.
Okay.
Mr. Burnett?
It's
Great meeting the other night too. At Ansley.
Yeah, it was fun. Sorry. Thank you for listening to the comments and neighbors around such a single family neighborhoods. Appreciate that. Number two, confirming that in EUE and all our neighborhoods have already started the process of updating
That's on top of it.
our policies on that one. Three, those policies do you, in a general sense, should those policies focus on the land use components of the comp plan, or should those policies reach broader to cover all of the other modules, transportation, urban design? Do we need to expand into some of those categories also?
I'm here for the long game. I am trying to clean up these NPU policies to make them stronger for the land use discussion right now. If there are capacity within your house to look at transportation, sustainability, please do so. But really focus on those land use because that is the number one thing that my department uses it for. I would say second priority would be transportation because the comprehensive transportation planning process soft launch is December with our little presentation, December 16th, but it starts in full throttle next year. So if you want to get ahead of your ideas about transportation needs, opportunities, and investment concerns, start thinking about them in your NPU policy updates now. So that would be my recommendations. Focus on land use, focus on transportation, focus on the nexus of that. Then if you have the bandwidth to look at other things like NPUH, looked at public health a lot and jobs, workforce development, go ahead and do that. But the focus would be in my preference.
Confirming that there's not a set format that there's still no set format.
We thought about it, but I'm here for the long game and you all have a lot on your plate already and I do too. So maybe next time around, we can look at a format. Maybe a CCI can help us figure out formats of the NPU policy that could be standardized. I know you guys just had a standardized conversation. Same with your NPU policies.
I just saw a thumbs up, go ahead.
Sorry, Catherine, do you have a draft for your standardization of small area plans? We have multiple neighborhoods in the community that are actively updating small neighborhood plans right now.
No, we do not yet, we are not yet in a draft. As you know, I'm Nate's co-pilot, so that's kind of where my focus is right now on the CDP. But certainly what would be a wonderful thing for APAB to do is to perhaps give us some recommendations on what they see fit, right? We can create a beautiful thing about making our own guide is to make sure it reflects what Atlanta's priorities are. And so certainly we need to cover all the topics in detail, but your recommendations, perhaps on the community engagement portion as well, like what you think is baseline of great community engagement, what you think, and even when I brought up the criteria, what do you think criteria should be?
Like priority of like, where should we focus the next 2 plans? Where should we go?
Knowing
APAB could be a
that we have
good.
7 people, and we'll have to. Not all. One of the things that I'm finding is that when we try to do all these meetings all over the city, sometimes we don't have a space. So think about like where we can be hosted, and the budgets unfortunately are always a constraint, but that's part of what we would love to have in recommendations. Like, do you have community networks that would host us if we were able to come into community? That type of information is so valuable.
Can we get a media packet also, just final thing, and if you
A what?
so a media packet on the website?
A media packet?
Yeah, like graphics that we can distribute, but we all have, newsletters, we have social media.
Sure, the ones that Jan, we'll send them out.
Yeah, or
The
you
digital
just
parts.
post them onto the website,
They-
so that everybody has access to them.
Yeah, they're all in our resources. They're all underneath that resources tab, like the fact sheet and all these
I mean, even just
boards.
like graphics that can-
But yes, we will work with Jan, our graphic guy,
Get
to
them
maybe
onto
get them
our
onto the website
resource
because, Sky mentioned like go to the senior center tower. Like we looked at the possibility of doing that, but we just cannot go to every single one. And we were looking at doing a media packet for like, how do we get it to that tower, that senior living tower? But if there's ways that we can give you that to you all and then disseminate it to the areas like a senior tower, that'd be great. So we will get Jan on top of that, our colleague this week, and we'll make sure that's part of my email to you all individually. I just been doing them individually to people when
All
asked.
right, so Mr. Schlichter, Mr. Hunter, Ms. Hawkins Flynn, and Ms. Stout.
In the same vein as the MPU's voting on the comprehensive development plan, are we gonna have to vote on the zoning plan as well?
Yeah, in fact, we never done a vote on the comp plan. It's not required by code. Updating the zoning code is required by code. Yeah. Yeah, we never went to every MPU to vote on the comp plan. I decided to do it.
All right.
Look at me.
When would that zoning vote be?
I don't know.
Well, that doesn't have a required timeline, this
Let's
does.
just be prepared for that. That's just gonna be a big one.
But this
It will
has-
be after the comp plan. It will be after the comp plan.
This has a good one.
What's that?
So I have 2 quick things. As we update our policies and stuff that we use also the plans, there are some things I think my side of town self at a disadvantage. Infrastructure, like how do we capture that where it also gets attention? For example, we have identified major corridors, Camden Road, that do not have sewer. But that's where we would like our density to be, because density is coming, we hear that, we know where we want to go, but we don't have the basic infrastructure to do it.
Right.
So I want to make sure that we capture that correctly this time. I know we have a meeting coming up that you all scheduled if you need, but I just want to, for those folks that have those kind of challenges, this is important that we get that in there, that, you know, we want this, but we don't have the basic foundation that gets us there. So, and the second thing is, in the small area plans on the graphic you put up, there was quite a bit of white, south of 20, on the west side, big portions on the east side. I would hope that when we get
All
there,
NPUs B or A, all NPU A.
I would hope that when we get to the point where we're there, that we prioritize those that are white, meaning there has not been one that you found first, so we make sure we get equitable resources to those areas.
Just to piggyback on that, the community work program will be the next version. I'm still going through those thousands of lines. Your NPU project list from 2016 will be archived in this comp plan. It would not be part of the community work program like it was not in 2020. That is part of the work for the next several years with small area plans, is to look at those ideas and get them into your comprehensive transportation plan, get them into a watersheds program for future infrastructure. Just want to highlight that.
Hey, thanks. I think you're scheduled to come to NPUI, the zoning committee in January. You know, my NPU, I think, I don't want to say it's been a little less sophisticated, maybe overlooked on some of these issues. Our comprehensive development plan, I think, was last submitted in 2021, and it went from like 5 bullets to a couple of pages. First of all, thanks, but I believe you're going to send out a compilation of all of the NPUs so we get to see what others have submitted.
Yeah, they're currently on the draft.
Yeah, thanks. Secondly, the attitude in my jurisdiction has kind of been, they're not binding. They're just
Recommendations.
They're just recommendations, which didn't encourage folks to put their shoulder to the grind. Is that still kind of the general feel?
Everything from the NPUs are recommendations, including our policies and the comp plan.
And what is the city's position on trying to best satisfy those, take into account the communities?
I can't speak on behalf of the city or city council, but I'm pretty, no one has spoken to me about it.
Because Lakewood in particular is pretty much an R4 community with very little prior industrial uses with which to put up a lot of multi-residential units. So we had a real feel against the ADUs and then some said even the possibility of attached ADUs, which would be duplexes. So that's been really big controversy.
Let's talk about that at your NPUI zoning, because maybe Catherine and I can also tee up that conversation with the zoning 2.0 team, because I think there might be zoning districts that would allow more flexibility between ADUs and like the R4. Don't take me on that, but I know that this whole ADU conversation and providing the flexibility for an R4 neighborhood in this part of town and an R4 neighborhood in this part of town, they have different opportunities. So let's talk about that at your meeting in January with us. We'll try to make sure our zoning 2.0 person is there with us.
We'll try to make sure.
And maybe that could be part of your NPUI policies. Like, let's explore this new zoning code because of our R4 concerns.
We will try our best to throw us ample in these to be able to
Okay.
hear from you.
These are not substitutes for community meetings. So we're trying to, and like, sometimes it's me and Catherine or another person. So we've been asking for these conversations with planners to be with your executive committee or a few people, 12 to 20 max. This is not a 50-person community.
I think you're appearing at the zoning committee.
Yeah. Okay.
Stop. So, can you talk more about the small area plans? Because we have a master plan for Hamlin Park that we paid 5 figures privately to Aaron Fortner to develop. Are you proposing something like that for every neighborhood?
I think.
I mean, you can't even Oh, we didn't used to have a planner every month, and now you're gonna do this for every neighborhood?
So so there are 245, 250 neighborhoods. I believe that's unrealistic for us to have 250 plans to manage. The idea is certainly neighborhoods are still more than capable and willing, obviously, to contract their own consultant to develop a plan and ask city council to adopt it. We are not proposing a situation like that's a little bit too far from where we are. We can't stop that. Nor do I think we should, because that just seems to be what people are comfortable with. When we're thinking about study areas and how we go all around the city, we have to think about what are the commonalities, particularly around our corridors. I've noticed a lot of NPUs have roads that divide them, and maybe we need to have study areas where the affected neighborhoods around a corridor are the neighborhood base to develop the plan, so they can just, because that is your lifeline in and out of your community. So you should be all part of determining what that is. So we have some work to do in determining what those study areas look like so that we can visit them. And then also, should new infrastructure appear, maybe we need to change those boundaries. But it's not quite clear. We're hoping to work with our current consultant moving forward to determine not only priority areas, our criteria, which we're asking for your involvement on, but what appropriate study areas and size are for streets.
So it would be more like Ponce Moreland.
The what?
It would be more like doing more Ponce Moreland corridor study type.
It's just one
It's
idea.
one idea.
Just one idea.
Because we've heard so much feedback. If you're gonna have density in Atlanta, you should put it where it's appropriate. Corridors seem to be an appropriate place. So that is.
But there
one
could be
thing.
lighter touches, like
Yes.
RR4, R1, R2, R3 should not be touched. And there might be just a simple few-week process to make sure that's codified somewhere in a plan. Now, to Amy's point, and I mentioned to Michael, if you're moving forward with any small area plan, crowdfunding, a consultant to come in, please ask us to be part of your advisory or stakeholder group. That is something that we are trying to do in the meantime, is to spread our resources into your planning process by sitting on your advisory board. We can provide you some guidance, bring your NPU policies into the conversation, bring some transportation ideas that we know ATL working. And that's how we are working with Ansley Park right now. So if you have any planning ideas for the next few months or next year, please reach out for a planning studio to ask one of us to be on your committee. We're doing that for a couple of CIDs right now as well. I've noticed being here almost 7 years, there were a few small area plans that never make it to council or through council because of various reasons, but one is DCP staff had no idea what's going on. We can't write your staff report, and your community engagement did not meet our expectations, i.e. council's expectations. We could have helped you overcome that one hurdle if you had involved us early and often. So please, if you have a small area planning process going on right now, invite us into the process as professional planners.
Thank you. And on that map, is there any sort of legend as to the different distinctions? So whether that small area plan is a by city council district, by neighborhood, like is there, can we get like, kind of like a
Yeah,
legend?
So these are the layers that are publicly accessible currently on ArcGIS.
And our
there's-
website.
Yeah, and there's no distinction on geography. If you're a small area plan, then you were just lumped into a small area plan. Some of those plans that are considered small area are not even land use, they're transportation, right? This is just everything that was adopted since 1999. So we'll have to work on a story map that, better explains what area has what. Because we also understand in ArcGIS, attribute table is not necessarily the most accessible thing.
And like the Beltline plans aren't even on our GIS public facing portal. So we've been asked by the commissioner to come with some way of illustrating the plans adopted over the years, kind of showing over the years how the smart area plan geographies have grown, but also to highlight what type of plan is this? Who did it? How do I get the plan?
Is a simple BID a plan in your?
Is it simple?
Right.
Sorry.
I was just wondering, thinking about what Ms. Lord would say about these conversations, is there appetite we can get there eventually where there could be some maybe some potential policies that come from APAB that are citywide that can lead to standardization. Like example, there has been conversations about having more planners dedicated to helping maybe MPUs or that are centralized close to each other. So, even though those are recommendations that we want placed somewhere, that we want to be a priority for the future. Like we want actual true planners for our neighborhoods. So it's an appetite where if we did the process of making sure that the majority of views on board, that could there be some citywide policies coming from APAB?
I don't know, maybe you can bring it up with the commissioner, maybe the first step would be writing a comment, a letter on behalf of APAB on stuff like that. And maybe we have till now, between now and June, to kind of work on something. Comment from APAB, a letter of comment, perfectly reasonable in my opinion.
Almost tangential to your question. This is probably for both Leah and yourself. With the realignment inevitable of the NPUs, what are these policies going to, well, I say inevitable, that's a quote. What is this going to do to the policies of a new combination of NPUs? Can you give us a little bit of insight into that? Put that wizard hat on.
We've talked about that a lot. I am probably going to have to defer to Nate because he is leading the Plan A project. But we have talked about that internally with the project team, which consists of most of the department leaders in planning and the commissioner, of course, deputy commissioner, myself, other directors, planners from the Office of Design. We have definitely considered that, and I don't have an answer for you, honestly.
I somehow expected that.
Yeah, I really don't. We thought about, because there really was no way to do it in the timing. It was too, there wasn't enough time to say, hey, instead of doing NPU policies, why don't we look at neighborhood policies, or why don't we look at NSA policies? There was just neighborhood statistical areas, NSA. There was just no way to pull that off in the schedule that Plan A had to keep in order to comply with the state laws. I don't know.
That being said, can we be assured that you guys will develop something that could possibly assist in that?
Yeah, I think what I can definitely commit to is that the work won't be in vain, or any more in vain than some. I know some of you feel like it already is in vain. It won't be any more in vain than you already think it is. I'll put it that way. It won't be like an exercise in futility because now they're no longer relevant. What will happen though, and honestly, my timeline is a little different from what I am hearing in the streets. I'm expecting that we don't begin what you're talking about, the reimagining work until 2026 anyway. We're laying the groundwork in 2025. We're doing all of the engagement in 2025, all the listening, all the proposing, etc., but not doing any real implementation and execution until 2026. And my hope is that what is in place stays in place long enough for the timeline to make sense. Is that clear?
Yes, that is perfectly clear that we're somewhere in the future. However, when that future comes, we don't want to be able to put different NPUs that are now different areas in a position where they start debating and we get like one NPU used to be where you had to have police.
For shame.
I didn't say that, and I'm not calling names, but anyhow, that's what we want to avoid. That's what I'm saying.
They don't have police officers in queue?
No, he's talking about when we
No,
had to have APD at the MPU meeting.
But anyhow, it's just a consideration, and I can digress.
I must be on.
Food for thought.
What are you?
I don't know. It's continuous to my NPU.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Stout? Did you have a follow-up? Did she clear up any questions?
Is the simple BID boundary listed as a,
Simple BID. Business Improvement District?
yeah,
We didn't put them up there now.
okay, so I'll ask you that.
We have a map showing the CIDs, but not.
Oh, a CID, okay, well, they went from a CID to a BID.
Okay.
So that's what that pink is?
No, that was their little 5 LCI.
Oh, okay.
We have reached out to all the CIDs, including the ones that like border us or come into us very small, like Fulton Industrial.
You
and
know they're
South
not
Metro.
human, so.
Yeah. But they are taking,
What if they conflict?
but they are taking on implementation responsibilities. They are taking on going after LCI
Yes.
grants. So we want to
Yes,
start
they
building
are.
relationships with them so they don't go so rogue.
Yes. I agree. Somebody said it.
Yes,
Hi, Barbara.
my situation is a little different, because we're right on the edge of the city of Atlanta, with South Fulton. And now South Fulton has discovered our area for data centers.
Mm.
We have the second one going up now.
Yeah.
Is there some way, I don't know whether or not we can make a policy or ask that the city develop a relationship with them so that we can talk about it, because one of the reasons we like our communities, because we had trees. Now all those trees are gone because they're making it into parking spaces right across the street.
Yep. Ms. Harris
So
and your
we're
chair brought
wondering
that
if
up.
that's a possibility.
Yep. Ms. Harris and Mr. Lee brought that up when we met with them earlier this week, the data center of Fulton County. So that's part of our kind of following up with inside our house. You know, what can we do to help with these situations? You know, I'll ask the question and I'll see what comes up. I'll get back with you guys.
Just to what Ms. Sullivan just said, have we seen legislation recently in opposition to those data centers?
It's not in the city.
Barbara's talking about stuff, their neighbors. Yeah, their neighbors. They get tax credits from Fulton.
Is there a conversation about how to get LCIs more teeth? Because we've seen, especially in PW, this issue with, I call it the former Value Village. It's a cluster where we had that huge development came in, got a special administrative permit, and kind of just bulldozed over the entire LCI initiative, what we were trying to do there, because they didn't have to go through the regular variance process. I can go on a 50-minute rant about why I hate SAPs. Should be gotten rid of. But I know it's probably more of a zoning question, maybe, but since we're still focusing on LCIs and trying to continue those initiatives, you know, I get to the point of what is the point of doing that if, you know, spending all this money and all this effort and all these thousands of hours of meetings, if published LCI, that, for instance, and then almost none of it gets implemented or bulldozed over.
It's not just the LCIs, all of our small area plans. Yeah, so actually when we did the diagnostic 2 years ago for the comp plan, that was brought up. It's like, one is the hierarchy, which one takes precedent. Two is we should think about codifying some of these things that are not codified right now, like the criteria to make recommendations following a small area plan, a comp plan, then a city design. So that is part of the recommendations in this draft. It was a part of the round 2 draft too. But we see that, and maybe that's something that we can work with APAB over the next, few months and next year or two as we bring the small area planning program into reality. We can bring some of those ideas about, having teeth.
I appreciate that, especially since SAPs tend to seemingly exist in an entirely separate dimension from a lot of this and just destroy a lot of the work that's been done, a lot of the planning, a lot of it happens in general. So, yeah.
Thank you all. I do have one other thing. While Nate is here, in his presence, I sent out an email to you all asking for APAB representatives of the community meetings. Shout out to those that have attended before. Sky has signed up to go to the historic preservation chapter, either as an APAB representative. I know you guys are going just because you are interested in a particular chapter. It's relevant to your community or your neighborhood, but I would love to have someone at each of these meetings that's actual there to represent APAB, the other transportation chapter. So if any of you all are willing to go to any of these meetings, historic preservation, transportation, housing, climate resilience, please let me know that you will be there in an official APAB capacity, so I can also relay that information to me. And if you're willing to raise your hand right now to sign up, that would be great too.
Yeah.
If you do come as an APAB rep, we will have a hoodie for you. We'll give you something.
And the hoodies are so nice, y'all.
But you have to wear it. You have,
No, do not get.
you have to wear it. You
I'll
have to
wear
wear
it.
it.
She wouldn't let me wear my shirt today, Nate.
She customized it.
I'll fix it.
Oh, you. Bedazzled.
No. Yes. Yes, I'll fix it. I'll go to all of them. Pick the one in them.
You're not gonna get multiple
I
hoodies.
have a question.
Just email me, please, with your preference for which meetings.
Yeah. And we are trying to promote coming to the transportation meeting without a car. So I have MARTA cards, like Breeze cards for people to get there and get back home. We're trying to work on scooters, so Segura, I'd like to talk to you afterwards about how we can work maybe with LETL and others to get people to that meeting off the belt line at Lee and White without a car in December.
Where's the house?
Housing meeting is at John Lewis and Victor.
Okay.
John Lewis and Victor.
What day is that?
January 29th or 30th.
29 or 30, I don't remember.
I can do that one.
Sounds like you're supposed to email us. Well, thank you all so much, and you'll see us for the next several months at your monthly meetings starting in the spring. And please, please, please ask for conversations with planners.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate you very much.
Appreciate you all.
If I could just say that this has, regardless of how things are turning out, this has been really good to the engagement plan that Patty has been doing.
Yes.
In terms of the
Yes.
coming back to us, I don't know if we have to request it, but the fact that you all just keep coming back as you're building, and making sure that you get our input, this is a model that should be replicated throughout the city. It's important.
Write it up.
You're gonna go back and watch the recording on your own?
Watch
the recording.
Sit down, Mike. Take time.
So you can do that, you can do that.
Come on.
Listen, from the hospitality.
I mean, but I thought we had.
We should do it again.
Which Mike says. There's 6 second clips.
If not, we can write. All right, y'all, we have 30 minutes. But I will say, I knew it was gonna be presentation heavy, and that was on purpose. It's for not having the December meeting, and this is all information that was time sensitive and needs. Even if we don't have a meeting in December, this should be relayed to your residents, as well as mull over and think through how you're gonna participate yourselves, and how you want APAB to further these initiatives. So we're on to new business, standing committee reports. All right, so governance committee, Debbie is not here, so still don't have bylaws. I will follow up on that again. Because ideally, we will have bylaws in review. We cannot move forward with our SOP without the bylaws. So we'll work on that. We had a governance committee meeting on November 7th. All of it is here in this report. I'm not going to go through that. But we do have some next steps coming out, some in progress action items. Quality of Life Committee is still tracking action on MARTA audit. And the 5 Point Station rehabilitation, there's been some movement on that. There are still questions about the actual status of the permit for the station. So, Quality of Life team follow that. We just talked about receiving bylaws. Finalizing the standard operating procedures. Again, cannot be complete without the bylaws. And then we still need to finalize the December social event logistics. Our next steps are to get those bylaws in for the first read. Quality of Life is going to get feedback from the Historic Preservation Studio about their recommendations. We need to determine a budget for the social event, and I think we will get some information from CP about that. And the recommendations, we didn't have an official meeting. It was a working group. So the recommendations that have come out of that meeting were regarding the CIG funds that we received in 2019. There was, I'm sorry, I do not. Essentially, there were expenditures for a lunch that was had in 2000 and end of 2020 or something like 2019, 2020. $25 per website and $100 for flowers for former sympathy flowers for former member Fiona Jones who passed. So with the remaining funds, the governance board recommended that $2,500 be used towards the next CID cycle for 2025. Essentially, it will be earmarked or honored as an APAB grant, and we would have the opportunity to review and select, participate in the review and selection of a project. Of that $2,500, it basically will be a bonus amount to any that wants to apply. And then that would leave $778.75 for marketing and outreach materials. That was suggested by Mr. Hunter. And as far as the social event, MPU has determined that they have money in their budget to be able to assist with that social event. I don't know what the dollar amount is yet. We'll find that out, but that way we're not having to spend any of those CID funds on the social event. And the reason we came to this is we're trying to figure out a way to have an impact without maxing out our capacity, especially at this time of year. And I don't want us to get into mid 2025. We're still trying to figure out how to spend funds. So that is the recommendation for that. We also have a recommendation for annual agenda planning, meaning what will our focus areas be for 2025. So December 24, I'll send out a survey so that we can receive agenda ideas. Our next meeting will be in January. The governance committee will present ideas for discussion by the board based upon that survey. February, the governance committee will present a draft agenda to the board. And then March 25, we would actually be able to adopt the agenda. That is our recommendation for planning. And then out of strategic planning, we recommended that we have a paper version or a out packet of the strategic recommendations that came out of our strategic planning earlier this year. One of those was to establish a communications schedule very specifically. Number 2.2 was to create a newsletter or some sort of like regular communication. We felt like right now that was APAB's capacity, and so we actually recommended creating an impact report at the end of 2025 for APAB to share with the chairs and views in any base that has an APAB appointment. And then Leah mentioned that there is a complete impact report, and to simplify it, we may be able to have a section dedicated to APAB as part of that. So those are the recommendations, and I am actually looking for any discussion or motion to accept the recommendations for the CIG expenditure. And again, that is $2,500 bonus award money to the CIG, the next CIG cycle, and then $778.75 for marketing and outreach materials. Any questions about this information or these recommendations? Ms. Out?
The 2,500 would go to somebody who's already getting a grant, just do more than they had planned.
So,
not a small 2,500, just not a separate grant, it's bonus.
there's precedence for that. It's been done before, so if you only have a certain amount of applicants and there's money left over, then sure. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm just what about the neighborhood members, we just decided that we will revisit it.
I mean, if it comes up, so Ms. Hawkins' question was regarding neighborhood matters, and the governance committee decided that that was not a priority or focus this year. And it actually, I don't know if anyone actually recommended that as a use of funds, especially aligned with the way that both of you move forward. So, and especially in trying to do it in that time frame, there's just no way that we could have pulled it off. Any other questions?
I would second that we accept the recommendations.
Well, there was no motion.
Oh, I thought you.
There's no motion at a committee. I'm looking for.
Okay. I thought that's what you were asking.
Well, I'm looking for a motion from the board because we couldn't we didn't have a committee, we had a working group, so we couldn't make a motion at a committee, so I'm looking for a motion here.
Without repeating, because I don't know that I could, I would make the motion that we accept the recommendations.
That's your second.
Any questions on the motion? Any objections?
I do have a discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm actually part of this, but with, I did have a request that, there be a review on planning. I think it's time for a refresh in the city plan. How you need to consistent with that for the actual one. It is a refresh. And please add that.
Is this our, is this our?
We have a logo.
It's just a bunch of words.
Right.
Exactly.
We need some plan.
So yeah, I don't want to print that on stuff.
Right.
So if we can refresh the logo, that would be, I think, it sounds like welcome.
And then we can get a nice hoodie.
Right.
With the myself.
Maybe that 25, grant can go for the hood.
And we give it up to now, we could.
Give them something for something.
Our city budget is put next year, so, you know.
Yeah.
Make something change.
Remember the
That was all.
dream job, the dream job.
All right.
Dream job.
They pay you to say that.
We have a motion on the floor, it's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any objections? Seeing none, it's been approved by unanimous consent. Thank you all. So, moving on to since we were just talking about that, I actually want to move on to quality of life real quick. Just to let you know, it's been told that your budget for the social event is $1,500.
Okay. Of course we can make it work, so is this a good time to talk about it?
Yeah, that's why I said, let's go ahead.
Okay, so do you guys want, like a venue just to gather, or do you want a venue to do some team building? Gather, you want to gather. Okay, great, that's it.
And you're gonna bring more muffins.
Yes.
$1,500, so more muffins.
Yes.
And they'll be, it's BYOB.
BYOB.
And bring the drinks.
Go ahead,
Bring what you drink in.
You got a couple minutes left.
We'll decide in the committee the location, obviously it's gonna be somewhere central, so what we'll do is kind of point on the map where all the neighborhoods are and put a star in the middle, and then work our way around that. Oh, I like that. So we're ready. Huh? The date. Date to be determined. Okay. Yeah, it's gonna be on a Saturday, we decided, but in the afternoon, what we decided the last time, about 4, 5 to 6, 7, just gotta figure out the location. And it'll be festive. Please and thank you, Jim, festive.
So just to
Is Jim
clarify,
gonna be Jim, are you gonna be sad?
so just to clarify, I know when we decided to cancel our meeting, we mentioned having that social event in blue.
Correct.
Meeting, so that would be Saturday, the 21st.
That's the 21st. Okay, there it is, the 21st.
It is the 21st?
It is the 21st.
All right.
From 4 PM to 8 PM.
That is
4 hours.
right?
I'll be sweater. People will come. Yeah,
Okay,
Don't invite me there.
What you say? Oh.
She said advice.
Of course.
I did that.
Our team here on PCP, okay, great. So we're looking at about
$2,000.
25 people approximately,
30.
30, and the significant other, yes or no? Probably no, because we only have 1,300 budget.
I think maybe the next one. I think we want to focus on us.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
And I think that should include the team that supports us.
Yep.
I got my secret.
Well, you cheated on me at the kids
I think that covers it all.
Anything else have a quality of life?
There we go with cheating. There we go.
Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, 5 points, that's great, finally it's getting. So I got a frustration with MARTA, they have compromised with the city of Atlanta to keep one entrance to the 5 points open and not have to move bus routes. So there won't be any bus rerouting, and you'll still be able to move about the station's normal program. I assume there'd probably be street entrances, since that's the most traveled one,
I think
and
it's
most
more, I
open
think
one.
it's more sizable.
It's Forsyth? Interesting, so it's not travel. They still don't have an estimated start date or restart date or how long it will take. We don't know that yet. It definitely takes a bit longer because you can't tear down a concrete structure without an active government space. So that's the whole thing. But at least we received a essentially a guarantee that the station is not going to be closed for public access. Yay. So that is there. Again, that's the only update we got so far. Nothing else new project. However, I learned recently the transformation project and rehabilitation project of 5 points are separate. They're administratively separate. I think funding separate. Well, so they're redoing the walls, they're redoing the flooring, or I think taking out the tile, but the vinyl, redoing the lighting, fixing the ceilings, signage, all that. Oh, and new seating in the actual station. That's still going ahead, that's still moving. Same construction. I was under the impression that that was tied to the transportation project and that had to be paused as well. That's not the case. So the rehabilitation project for the station itself, not the project, can continue, but the transformation project for the project is what's on. So that's good to know, because I didn't know that was just the thing. Last thing, a couple months ago, that Record King brought up the preservation issue for historic structures based on the Gallery School of Gresham building being demolished, and it's on National Register of Historic Places. So we come up with a recommendation that this draft is not voted yet. Essentially to automatically place National Register of Buildings as designated by the federal government onto the local landmark system that Atlanta already has. And there's very few, I think there's only 2 landmark structures right now in the city of Atlanta. I know the one with Audi Bridge that the development over is one of them. I don't know. The other one is Stone Bridge was the first one. We got that a couple years ago, but it's a relatively underutilized system right now. And it has the same general effect as say historically. Problem is kind of grassroots trying to get a structure designated landmark or to establish a historic district, as we have seen in Kendall Park recently, that I think failed after 2-3 years of just organizing and having hearings and talking about it. It takes immensely long to even start that process. So trying to do this in grassroots for every one of these structures, there's around 250 structures just in the city of Atlanta that are designated on the historic register. I think there's 20-ish districts. One thing that Thomas government made was to figure out, how many of those structures are in disrepair, how many structures are kind of seemingly too far gone south. I'm still trying to figure that out since I don't exactly. Yeah. But the current recommendation is to take all of these structures and retroactively give them landmark status from the city of Atlanta, since that's a thing that we have. And it saves years of time and hours in trying to do that individually for each one. I am still waiting to hear back from Matt Adams in the Historic Preservation Studio as to what issues they have, what they conflict with, how easy or how difficult it may be to implement. Still waiting. But this seems to be a nice kind of, at least for now, catch-all thing to just stop more of these things from being torn down to being really random, since I recognize just going through this process one by one takes forever. And Grant Park took 10 years for us to get our historic district done, and we've been trying to redo it for another 10 years. And I have no idea how long Inman Park and West Side, West End, it used to forever. So going about it that way, it's just kind of resulting where these things are strong. So again, still waiting to hear back from Office of Design Studio about that, but that's why we put this for January.
A quick question is the wording of the paper talks about structures, and we are talking about the structures and not the neighborhoods.
Yeah, not specifically neighborhood, since we're trying to go and apply a landmark designation to a whole neighborhood. That is ironically less efficient than he's trying to do it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, a lot of this comes on from the fact that National Register of Places are not automatically protected from any kind of demolition. They are only applicable under the local zoning code, or whatever zoning code applies, or, sorry, zoning code, to prevent demolition. So just because we've got National Register of Places in the Grand Park, and that Grand Park is a National Register District.
No protection.
Yeah, there's no protection just by being in that district. The teeth still come from your local law.
Yeah.
And that's what this is kind of more geared towards, because it kind of makes the National Register not pointless, but I question the viability of it if it's not going to actually protect it. So that's what this is geared towards.
So I just encourage you, make sure that it's clear in the paper that we are talking about individual buildings that are listed and not listed neighborhoods.
Yes.
Because that, I think, to the point of recent events in neighborhoods rejecting historic designations. I think you would get hung up if you tried to bring in the National Register neighborhoods as part of that.
So like individual structures, that kind of thing.
That is, maybe be specific about individual structures that are listed, not neighborhoods that are listed.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I was going to also recommend maybe a combined meeting with both committees, policy and part of life. We also have some information working on with that with most of listening. That's over there. Student will be in his office.
Yeah.
Madam?
No. Divine Green Park.
Oh,
David Mitchell.
Yes.
David.
So in terms of things that are very, there's this space of vibration, which was not at a meeting next month. And just focus on this.
And we will still meet in December on the second, first Monday, I think it's the second.
So what I'll ask then is if there's gonna be a historic preservation meeting, is just send out an email. You all collaborate on setting up the date and time, and send out an email to APAB so that it's open to anyone that's interested in participating in the historic preservation discussion.
Sorry, voter audit. That's the last thing. So we started to look at the audits, huge document about halfway through it at this point, but I was going to consider Marta's response to the audit that came out September. Marta's main comments about audit are that the methodology used to calculate the costs is incorrect, according to MARTA, since it's using, and they say COVID-based essential service allocation methodology, pre-COVID service planning and delivery. That's the biggest issue that they have with the audit so far. So while it's kind of in their court, get back to the city and figure out how we proceed. Now, there's this fundamental disconnect in how the audit is done. However, MARTA did generally agree with a lot of the assessments that the audit made, especially in terms of the issues with the intergovernmental agreement as established in 2020 between the city specifically and MARTA, and how broad a lot of these requests for documentation are, and how narrow some of them are in relation to exact project level info is not needed to go in between the city and MARTA all the time, because there's a lot of macro information that just does not come to the city from MARTA, and vice versa. So agree. And the city has maintained issues with how MARTA tracks some of their records. Luckily, right now, MARTA actively shares most of their financial documentation with the city in real time. So it's not having to go and send an email and all this stuff to the city. But it is good to see that MARTA is generally in agreement that the intergovernmental agreement needs to be either reworded, tweaked, or just redone entirely between MARTA and the city. And having some more dedicated staff for liaison purposes. There's just not. It's weird. It simultaneously says there is dedicated staff, and that there isn't dedicated staff, which is very right.
So,
The city is limited personnel to the More Martin Atlanta program, including new personnel dedicated solely to the More Martin Atlanta program. That sounds, you see what I mean? That's a very strange phrase.
Mr. Hassan, that's a lot of that discussion we had at the committee.
Yes.
So just the status update is that the audit has been moved to another consultant, KPMG. That was requested by Martok, which is the oversight committee for so they're audit of the audit. So
that's why I say the ball's kind of in Marta's court again for this, but it's I encourage all to read. It's very interesting.
And I'm just pushing this along because we're at 12:25 and we really have to get this strategic planning update done. I will entertain.
I'm so sorry, I just looked at the calendar, December 21st, the mayor's ball. So do we want to move that a little earlier in the afternoon to maybe 2 to 4, or?
Is everyone going to the mayor's ball?
Yeah.
I'll ask you to send out a,
You want to do it early? You usually go to the ball, don't you, yeah?
I'll ask you to send out the mayor's ball.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. I'll entertain a motion, please, I'm sorry, y'all, to extend the meeting. So moved. 10 minutes.
7. 5.
I mean, I understand, but we need a vote for the strategic plan. So, I'll entertain, can I get y'all to vote this time?
Yeah.
All right, so motion by Mr. Hunter, is there a second?
Second.
Do I have a second by Ms. Steins? I don't even want to ask if there are any objections. Are there any objections? All right, approved by unanimous consent, and I promise you, if we can get out of here at 12:38.
I'll be right back.
Okay, go ahead, policy committee.
The only update that we need to press is, we did send out, an OIG, APAB, if you let us support. We want to know if there's any, we can see any letters, any signed letters of support, sending them back to the And then in addition to that, we are still in progress, the historic preservation. We also took on some, I would say unofficially, but the inquiries about, for our temperature to explore the fact sheet that we received as part of certain, citywide variances, SAP application process, as well as applications that they do future review. We want to look at the processing review of those, as part of our request, as well. So that's all we have to
Yeah, the fact. Putting on the fact sheet.
We're requesting.
So, which fact sheets?
It's in when we have something.
Oh, to the monthly meetings. Is that our purview? Like, are you wanting to look at creating a new template, or do you just want to give recommendations?
We want to be able to give recommendations in terms of what we receive, in terms of, make sure it's helpful.
Make sure it's helpful. Make sure it's helpful.
So strong recommendation that we incorporate that into recommendations in the Planning and Landing Together initiative. I've already given the heads up to the deputy commissioner that recommendations will be coming in that area and others. I didn't know y'all were working on it, but I had planned on working on it, so I'm glad that you guys will. But yeah, I think it's a good time to get all of that stuff in, because I'll be honest with you, as I always am. We'll be looking for low-hanging fruit and easy wins in the beginning. And that's low-hanging fruit and it's an easy win. And I think those are the things that we can check off real easily. And get them done. The worksheet, get on that, submitted as a part of a list of recommendations, not a one-off.
But there's been several months in complaints with the policies and the
It's
fact
been
sheet.
years. The fact sheet has been a complaint
But
for
we
several
don't,
years.
we don't want to wait till 2026.
26.
That's what you're saying, you never start, Jeff.
I absolutely did not say that. I never said that. Absolutely not.
We can work through the time frame, but it sounds like there is an appetite for it.
We're gonna do it with or without APAC's recommendation. Bottom line, the fact sheets are awful. Everybody knows it, and we have, yeah, that's gonna happen with or without APAC's recommendation.
It's not just the furnishes, SAP applications, when they go to the review, they go, we want them to be, so we visited that. And as well as the other applications we sent to review, we want them to be just some context. How we can better help the city make better informed decisions.
Well, I've said many places many times, the SAP process is bad. And the best way to fix it, in my opinion, would be to eliminate administrative variations altogether. Well, I mean, they don't expedite anything because we have a public hearing process. So you might as well, if you're seeking an administrative variation, simply get a zoning variance for the same. And if we're gonna make a recommendation to the city about SAP process, I would say that recommendation should at least include the elimination of administrative variances.
Yes.
We Sure.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for, policy? Is that the end of your report, Mr. Hendricks? Is that the end of your report? Okay. Next we'll move on. Is there any unfinished business? Or new items for consideration? I'm sorry.
I have a question about pending status.
So I have some information that I requested, you and I'll follow up after this week. No new items, Mr. Chairman?
Likewise, my pending status, I think it's moot at this point, right?
I was gonna
Yeah,
ask if you were
so
responsible.
I also requested information from you that I never received, so we can talk about that offline.
I had already provided that same information.
There's a machine that the information shows.
I'll follow up.
Okay.
New items for consideration. Unfinished business.
So new items, we're asking for, like, SAP and APAB application review to be assigned to the council.
Yes, so. All right, on to the strategic planning update with Leah. You guys have, you should have received a digital copy of this. This is the recommendations from Sizemore. They went over it back in March, I believe it was. Before Leah starts, I just wanted us to get to the recommendation section at the back. There were a few recommendations around enhancing the relevancy of APAB, reestablish APAB's purpose. If we establish our purpose, I think we know what APAB's purpose is. We just need clarity on how to operate. We have created a one-page position paper to convey our opinion that we've done. We will be working on our focus areas for 2025. Under our strategic goal number 2, which is effectiveness of the board, we are in the process of, or DCT is in the process of creating an onboarding process for our review. We talked about the recommendation out of the governance committee regarding the communication schedule. This was some sort of expectation of doing some sort of newsletter. We decided to change that to an impact report. And then having some sort of way for us to build and have more connectivity outside of these meetings. And so we'll be having a social next month. And also, I sent out an email to you all maybe a month or so ago about doing a tour of, I'm going to still say the Gulch, that's in Centennial Yards. And so there are established dates and times so we can get together as a group and have our own tour. So if you're interested in that, I will send that again. I will send that out again, let me know if you're interested so I can let them know how many people. 12-month recommendation around a scorecard, again, that impact report would tackle that, address that as well as communication. And then 36 months looking at the inclusion in all planning efforts impacting the lands adopted CEP, equitable benefit for the world across all attributes, revision of the APAP ordinance, and then create a form for volunteer advisory planning groups. So we have increased our inclusion. We will be included per the mayor in that budgeting process. We have a seat at the table as part of the showcase initiative. And again, some sort of form for the volunteer advisory planning groups. That's a long-term out. Basically, we're looking at how do we have a large community with other bodies like this across the nation. So that obviously is part of the longer project. But I just wanted to highlight that for you all to show how much work that you all have been able to accomplish over the past year and how all these small steps have really culminated in great forward action. So thank you for all of your effort. Leah?
So first, I'm gonna run real quickly through my stuff, and then I understand the SOP for advisory statements is not in your packet for November. It is in the tab under October because you reviewed it last month, and we did not get any feedback on what you reviewed, which I take to mean you don't have any edits or changes. This is kind of the last call for edits and changes because I would like to ask for a vote to adopt. Oh, here it is. It's the document that looks like this. It says standard operating procedures draft 10/19/24 for advisory statements. It's in your October tab. So if there is no feedback on that, I would love for you all to adopt this as the process by which we will inform the work that we do on your advisory statements. And I would just point out that as with everything else that you all have adopted in conjunction with the strategic planning, this is not a bylaws amendment. It is not a policy. It really is just to give us guidance and direction on how we process the recommendations that come from you all.
President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt.
I have one question before we adopt.
Sorry.
Mr. Barnett, advisory statement.
Advisory statement, thank you. Yes.
Is there a second? Is there discussion on the motion?
I just have a question, follow-up question. I know you've been working on this, but in terms of getting, like, we had on this, we wanted to get ready to council. We can receive the file. Have you found out any information about that?
I have a meeting with the clerk next week. I was hoping to get that meeting before this meeting, but our schedules just didn't align, so I'll meet with her next week and I'll let you all know. But I don't anticipate any obstacles at all. It's not a complicated, it hasn't been a complicated process in the past. And I'm not aware of any changes to the process whatsoever that would make it difficult.
So very things.
Yeah. I just would point out again that I wouldn't want APAB to be comfortable with that step. And I still strongly encourage you all to follow this and have someone someone from the board reading in your advice at the appropriate committee meeting and at the council meeting. Even if it is read in as a communication from the clerk's office, a representative of this board is still strongly encouraged to read it audibly at the appropriate meeting.
Just like any.
Yes. We're in agreement.
This being the sole statement.
Ma'am?
This being the sole statement.
That's up to APAB. That's certainly our advice, because you remember you're speaking with the unified voice and don't want multiple people speaking, about things that are not, that this board did not agree to. So that's up to y'all though.
So there was a clear distinction made between someone is going to represent APAB and versus someone who's going as an individual or their MPU. And so I'm sorry, I was reading, I had a note that said something about additional bullet points explaining the APAB purpose of this report.
We did that.
Okay.
I had that written down too. Yeah, we sent out, remember, this past month, which is also in my update for y'all today to discuss.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor to accept the standard operating procedures on advisory statements. Any other discussion? No? Okay.
I have one quick clarification. It is no longer a draft. This,
Yes, correct.
it is, what we see is what we get.
Yes, and we'll provide that next month.
Thank you.
Or, sorry, January. Yeah. And in January, I'll let you vote first. Okay.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, unanimous consent. What's next?
All right, so the last item for me is my monthly report, but I wanted to point out that in January, you'll have not only that finalized document, but all of the finalized documents that you all have adopted since the beginning of your strategic planning. Remember that many of them said standard operating procedures at the top because they were individual sections of your SOP. So in January, you'll have a finalized, and I use air quotes for finalized because it can always be amended, but your finalized SOP document for the board moving forward.
In a book form?
Something like that, okay. So, hey y'all, thank you so much for those chairs and guests that attended our annual Chairs Appreciation Dinner. The event is never, or could never be successful without showing up. So thank you for showing up to just one more thing this year. I really appreciate you, and I'd be remiss if I didn't also thank, for the record, Marta for providing Reese cards for people who, and I want to shout out Mr. Martin, who literally every year since we started doing this in 2019, when we include in our email that says, you know, park here and parking will be validated, Mr. Martin always calls or sends an email saying, what about the people who take MARTA? And I always roll my eyes like, if you have a monthly pass, what do you want me to do? But we did reach out to MARTA this year. Because y'all know I try my best to give you what you asked for. And this year we reached out to MARTA and asked them, and they were more than happy, did not hesitate to donate round trip cards for those who take MARTA. I also want to thank Jackmont Hospitality, which is a company founded by the late Maynard Jackson and his daughter, along with Dan Halpern, who are still, Dan Halpern and Brooke Jackson are still the co-founding executive officers of Jackmont Hospitality. They sponsored the bar for that event. Because again, last year we heard y'all, everybody was like, where's the liquor? You need some alcohol in here. And it was complicated, but we got it done thanks to a sponsorship. Feedback on the APAB report notes, which is what you were talking about from your notes. I did receive feedback from one MPU who had some question or maybe hesitation about the report notes for your updates at your MPUs. Remember last month we talked about giving you something that you could use at your MPUs. Thank you.
I use mine.
I thought it was nice.
Thank you. Well, we got feedback that in any case, we were able to work around that by just providing the Word document. So moving forward, we'll be giving you a Word document so you can edit it however you see fit to, you know, read that at your MPU. And to reiterate, this is just help. It's not required in any way. This board has not decided, and we have not asked for this board to decide to ask you to read that statement verbatim. This is just a guide for those that need those extra notes to kind of get context to what y'all discussed in the meeting. Batteries running low, so I'm gonna run through this. Wellness assessment. We're about a fifth of the way there. We have we have about 5 weeks to finalize this. A very low participation from E, G, H, J, K, N, Q, and Y. 8 MPUs, very low participation. So I'm asking all of you to please send the link to the wellness assessment out, but especially D, G, H, J, K, N, Q, and Y. This, of course, this assessment is going to inform the work that we're beginning in 2025 and in 2026 to reimagine the NPU system and what civic engagement looks like in Atlanta. I'll skip this other stuff in the interest of time, but last but not least, this is the last meeting of the year, and I wanted to point out that this is the end of your first full meeting under your newly structured board. Big kudos to all of you. I have to give homage to Ms. Phillips, who began this work last year, and to Ms. Jones, who continued this work this year, but really to all of you for seeing the need to restructure your board and for agreeing to do it and for working through it. There were a lot of naysayers, as y'all may recall. There were a lot of folks who swore that you wouldn't be able to meet quorum. There has never been a meeting this year where you didn't have a quorum. You've continued to maintain the same average attendance that you had last year. We've had up to 22 members in one meeting this year. We had the same thing last year. So kudos to all of you. I know that as we complete NPU elections, some of you may be transitioning off of the board and may have other people in the board in your place. So if this is your last meeting, and I don't know whose last meeting it might be, but if this is your last meeting, I want to thank you so much from the Department of City Planning and from my team for all of the work that you all do. I say this often, and I will say it again. I personally, Leah, do not take this work for granted. I don't take your volunteer work for granted. You do not have to be here on a Saturday morning. I have to be here on this Saturday morning. My team, we have to be here today. You don't. So thank you for being here, and thank you for everything that you do for your neighborhood, for your NPU, for the city of Atlanta.
Leah, please,
yes, ma'am.
Please acknowledge that we will be losing Mr. Kipling.
What? Yeah, what? Let me acknowledge that. So, and I think I forgot to mention Sam too. I definitely forgot to mention her at the chair's dinner. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Oh no! So let me first say before I get to Kip, Samantha Terry, who was my first hire and has been with us for 5.5 years, accepted an opportunity in the mayor's office. A promotional opportunity in the mayor's office. She's been there for a few weeks now and is thriving. And I could not be happier for Samantha. She led NPU University. We have interviews on Wednesday to fill that position. We definitely will not be hiring another Sam because there is nobody like Sam, but we'll be getting the best that we possibly can to fill that role. And then Kip has accepted another role on his last day, not at the city of Atlanta, outside of the city. He can tell you all about that after the meeting if he wants. I know I'm trying to respect time. But Kip's last day with us. How dare you, Kip? 29. No, this is a good thing. Listen, I'm serious, not because I want him to go. I tell all my team members coming in the door, don't get stuck here. Get everything you can get out of the role, serve to the best of your ability, and move on to your next big opportunity. So I'm really proud of Kip he has grown so much and learned so much at home. And has given so much. Yeah. So I'm really proud of him for taking everything that he got from this opportunity and applying it someplace else. And I'm the same thing. You can in everyone. So
Congratulations, Kip.
Congrats, Kip. Tell man, but.
So, I know we're going over y'all, I just wanted to say real quick, I just saw an email about APAB disability, I just want you to know that did not come from me. I don't know if my name was indicated at the bottom, it's just my contact information, but it kind of looks like it was a signature, but that did not come from me. I will be responding to it, but just to let you know that it did not come from me. Mr. Hunter?
I said, one more suggestion, quick comment. If we can add to the list of things to look at, would be, I was gonna ask if we can have one of the committees look at the equitable benefits, the different things that happen surrounding the World Cup. There was another, I think, $120 million infrastructure bond passed, with a very dedicated area. But as we all know, as residents of the city, we have big events downtown, but everyone wants to stay downtown. We also need improvements in other areas. I can't think of an event that happens in this city that you don't see an influx in Camp Creek, just as far as some go. And that's just it, but there never is benefit being preparation for that side of town for events. So I think that we should have a committee that looks into that little benefit of whatever it is, for this media infrastructure bonds for major events in the city. We have the Super Bowl coming again, and I think that a committee should take that up. And the last thing I was gonna say, ironically, was about visibility. I didn't send it. Did you send it? I didn't send it either. But I wanted to say that, since we've been doing these things, we've been quoted by multiple articles in AJC. The Ryder report we can't go on an issue without being, the Ryder report, without being talked about in that, like, people are noticing what we're doing, they're listening. And even if we feel like the people we are charged with advising is not listening, the Atlanta is. And I think we can continue to stay on our path, only get better from here. So that's kudos to the team, and also your leadership. This is Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Don't forget to vote, and whatever you did for that last election, to get your neighbors out, do the same thing for this one coming up on December 2nd, the runoff.
Third.
This is second first.
Happening on the second, I'm so sorry. All right, I'll take a motion to.
So moved.
Second.
I don't see that.
Thank you.
I didn't see it when I go. So, yeah. Be back here next year at the time. You have to come back.
Oh, I'm doing it.
Everybody really.
I don't mind it, but. I guess I can
That's why I had my mask on. So. No, I don't.
At least 10.
Michael, how long have you been here?
It's newer.
So we're all in it.
This class, this is the biggest freshman class.
1 year for me. I guess I have to. She said I had to. Ashley told me I have to say. Knowledgeable about a lot of the components.
I really feel it.
I'm learning.